Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1129 of the War News Stream. And today we have very big news that Russia has broken the Ukraine energy ceasefire amid their recent strikes. Also, Putin has sabotaged future peace talks with the USA, and Ukraine is advancing with more frontline momentum. And it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, but particularly the news from the war in Ukraine today, as we have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have inflicted a significant amount of losses onto the Russian Federation's armed forces on the battlefield, with the Russians suffering nearly 2,000 soldiers wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, making it one of the highest loss days that we have seen for the Russian army up to this point, at least over the past few months. We have also been able to hear very significant news that the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to keep their offensive momentum in Toretsk as well as Pokrovsk and throughout the entirety of the Donbass, and according to President Zelensky today, he has announced that the entirety of the Eastern Front has been stabilized and Ukrainian armed forces have the initiative. We have also been able to hear other major news as well, that the Russian Federation has violated the ceasefire agreements in clear and evident proof, and not only that, the Russian Federation is now demanding that if any negotiations are to continue between the United States and Russia and Ukraine, that the government of Volodymyr Zelensky and the entire Ukrainian government under him must be removed from power for negotiations to continue. Once again, meaning that the Russian Federation is looking at unconditional terms to even get into a ceasefire at this point, meaning that they are not wanting to get into a ceasefire. The United States of America today has made some fairly interesting statements. It appears that they're now trying to make an issue out of the Russian Federation using Iranian Shahed 136 drones, which have been used over the entirety of the war, but now we are once again trying to create an issue out of it where there has largely been an issue for years. We have also been able to see that inside of Europe, the Germans are now announcing that the entirety of Europe needs to be ready for Russia to conduct a conventional war against the whole of NATO within the next few years. And we've also been able to see that they seized and began to operate the Everton. Meanwhile, inside of Lithuania, search and rescue operations, or really recovery operations at this point, are still underway near Pobrady as they attempt to recover the abandoned or largely sunk Mi-88 recovery vehicle. We've also been able to hear inside the area of the state of Israel that they are enraged apparently over the leak, the group chat leak that happened inside the United States on Signal. We have also been able to see that a Triton has been surveying Iran, and at the same time we've gotten significant announcements today that top officials of the Yemeni Houthi government have been killed. Meanwhile, we were able to see that even more B-2 bombers have arrived at Diego Garcia, and we've also been able to hear that the Chinese have blocked the plan for the C.K. Hutchison Company out of Hong Kong to be able to sell the 2 ports in Panama to BlackRock. It appears that today was a fairly significant news day, and I also have to put this out there for some of y'all to know, at least going up front. Tonight's news summary is going to be a little bit faster or a little bit more summarized than normal, which it doesn't really mean much. The news segment is usually about 2 hours long as it is, but tonight there is a little bit of a special circumstance. In less than 10 hours from now, I'm going to be on an airplane heading to somewhere else inside the United States, and I'm going to be there for several days, conducting some business on the part of our channel, or really figuring out where Enforcer HQ 3.0 is going to be, and if it will be there or if it's going to be somewhere else. Because of that, I will not be able to have the complete time that I normally would have had to be able to chit-chat and talk about the news in great detail, because I will have to be on a plane at 7 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So I will be going through the news a little bit quicker tonight, meaning that our news segment will be about 20 minutes shorter, which in the big sense of things isn't that much, considering that the news segment is usually already 2 hours long. But nevertheless, we are going to be moving on into our major news. Also, by the way, one more thing, I forgot to add this in. One more big thing that I do have to tell you all is that there will be no more live streams tomorrow to Tuesday. So from tomorrow, which is Saturday, all the way up until Tuesday of next week, there are going to be no live streams coming out from this channel. Enforcer Matt's going to be holding the fort down and putting out every single short war video that he can to fill in for the missing live streams, but until Wednesday of next week, there will be no more live streams. So I would hope that y'all appreciate this one while y'all can, because this is going to be the last one, at least for a pretty significant stint, considering that we're on here 6 days a week, every single day, every single week of every single month, for every single year, and it's very rare that we ever take off any kind of time from the show. But moving on from that and into the news, now that we've gotten all of the announcements away for everyone to know, we are going to be getting on into the major news, and we were able to hear that the Russian Federation has completely broken down any kind of an attempt at a peace talk, and is once again showing very clearly today that they are operating in bad faith, quite clearly to the point that it appears that there's no other way for the United States to perceive the statements, as we were able to hear today that the Russian Federation has appealed to the United Nations that there will be no further negotiations with the state of Ukraine or the United States to end the war unless if the state of Ukraine's government is completely changed from the Zelensky government and into one that maybe, or more likely would be, suitable to Russian interests. We were actually able to hear that the United Nations already responded to this assertion by the Russians, and the United Nations has rejected Putin's call for a temporary administration in Ukraine. Guterres says Ukraine's legitimate government must be respected, dismissing external governance under UN as part of a peace deal. And that is according to Sky News, and that's according to the statements that were made today by the United Nations. It appears that the Russian Federation has made it incredibly clear by this attempt today, not only did the United States shoot that down, but the United Nations also shot that down, that the Russian Federation is operating in bad faith like we've been saying for weeks now, and the Russian Federation has no wish or hope of attempting to negotiate any kind of a ceasefire at this point because it's simply not within their will to do so. They do believe that they can continue to fight the war or force a victory on their terms, and for these reasons, it appears that they are going to be continuing on with their attempts at fighting the war instead of peacefully bringing it to some form of a resolution. We have also been able to hear inside of the Capitol, or at least inside of the White House today, that it appears that the President of the United States wasn't really that big of a fan about the Russian Federation using Iranian drones. Now, Matthew, I was wanting to ask you really quickly, do you believe that there's any copyright on this specific clip right here?
Yes, probably so.
Okay, so sadly we won't be able to play the clip, but I can paraphrase largely what we're talking about, or at least what he was talking about in the clip. The President of the United States announced that he had received reports about the use of Iranian drones in the war against Ukraine, and stated that that was a bit of an issue, and tried to insinuate that the Russian Federation and Iran were in cahoots with each other. Now, I do have something that is quite shocking for the president. Reports of Iranian drones being used by the Russian Federation against Ukraine has been going on for 3 years. Really, ever since the first month of the war, we had been hearing that the Russians were using Shahed 136 drones by the Iranians. As a matter of fact, it's actually less prevalent now than it was at any other point in the war, because the Russian Federation license produces the Iranian drones now, meaning that while they're an Iranian design, they are still Russian produced. Back at the beginning of the war, however, the Iranians would actually have them imported straight from Iran. So now it appears that the President of the United States is starting to act like something that's been going on for 3 years is brand new, and then create a problem out of it when it's been a problem for, once again, 3 straight years. So it is starting to show us that the President of the United States, although I can't say this with certainty, may be trying to change the direction that the United States has been viewing the conflict in, and start viewing it in a more anti-Russian aspect instead of a more anti-Ukrainian aspect. Due to the fact that the Russian Federation continues to operate in bad faith in the peace negotiations, it really is forcing the United States' hand, whether they want it to be or not, to recognize that the state of Ukraine is the defending party, the Russians are the aggressor party, and not only that, they are a very unfriendly and hostile aggressor party, not only to Ukraine but the Western world at large. And for this reason, well, you're starting to see that the president's, at least perspective of the war may be changing, hopefully in a way that actually will count. It's not just today and then tomorrow we say that we're going to start bombing Ukraine. Who knows? But moving on from that and out of the news inside the United States, we have also been able to hear in other diplomatic words that the Germans are saying that Putin is preparing for a major war with NATO. But before we get into that, I do want to speak a little bit more about the news, the bombshell that we pretty much dropped on you all a second ago. That isn't really a bombshell. It's more like a small piece of potato dropping from the sky and then splatting on the ground, in a very uneventful way. But nevertheless, Putin says that he won't have peace talks with Zelensky still in power. And a lot of people are wondering, are talks finally collapsed? And it seems as though everyone's saying yes. I mean, that would be the obvious answer. Some others are saying that it's no, talks can still take place. Some are saying that's a 50-50 chance, and others are unsure. But Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So it looks like 76% of the audience said yes, the talks are permanently over, while 10% said no, the talks can still take place, and 9% said it's really a 50-50 chance. And on this one right here, it sounds like this is a red line that Putin is drawing in the sand. So with him saying that he will not have a real peace talk with the Zelensky government, that's going to make it impossible to bring the war to an end with Zelensky still in power. And there is no plans to bring Zelensky out of power. The U.S. has already rejected the idea of the UN taking over the Ukraine government. That's just insane. And even the U.S. is rejecting that. So I would say it sounds to me like the talks are permanently over. And this is Putin's way of saying that we are not going to end the war under any circumstance until we have all of our demands met. So I'm with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree with the majority as well. Not recognizing the Ukrainian government that's in power right now pretty much stops negotiations where they are. The United States can't continue to negotiate. The Russians will refuse to. And the United States is going to refuse to remove the Zelensky government from power in Ukraine. And it appears that no one in the Ukrainian government would ever want to conduct a coup d'etat to remove Volodymyr Zelensky as the president of Ukraine to further American ambitions of ending the war. Pretty much meaning that at this point, the Russians are forcing everyone's hand to continue on the war whether they wanted to or not. That's at least how it's being viewed right now, so I'd have to be with a large majority on that. But moving on from that news and on into the rest of the news that we were able to get, we were able to hear of something very interesting that was coming out of Germany today, as it appears that once again, the Germans are getting somewhat concerned about an upcoming major war, or a major conventional war with the Russian Federation. As according to Bild, which is a German newspaper, Putin is preparing for a large-scale war with NATO and could be ready by the late 2020s. At present, the Kremlin lacks the force for a direct military confrontation. Still, according to Lithuania's intelligence service, the VSD, Moscow could test NATO with limited military operations against one or more member states. Once again, clearly showing, at least at this point, according to intelligence sources throughout Europe, that there is some sort of a war that eventually will be happening with the Russian Federation. If it's not now, it will be later, several years into the future. This is something that we see a lot of countries are actively working towards as a solid belief and a solid affirmation due to the intelligence that they've received will be happening, as the Polish and the Lithuanians have been mining their borders with Belarus and Russia and have also been conducting mass conscription. Well, at least on the Polish side of things, they've been conducting mass conscription to be able to try and get all able-bodied males throughout the Republic of Poland ready and trained for military service if the moment ever arises. It is once again showing us that the Russian Federation is clearly eyeballing some sort of larger conflict with Europe, and all of the European nations are starting to understand this, and they are preparing for this accordingly and really trying to get themselves ready for what will be inevitable. However, we have also been able to hear that the Germans have done their own little escalation in a way, a fairly well-deserved escalation, but still an escalation nevertheless, as we were able to hear that Germany is now operating the Everton tanker as their own tanker. This one was a pretty fun one, a pretty fun one, and I'll remind you all of a little bit of the story around it. That is the Everton. The Everton was a Russian Shadow Fleet oil tanker that was being used by the Russian Federation to transport oil and circumvent sanctions, so that way the Russian Federation could continue to finance their war. Over the course of several years, this vessel has been one of the largest and best kept vessels of that Shadow Fleet, but a little while ago, the Everton actually dragged an anchor over a telecommunications cable at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, and the German government went forward and actually seized the vessel by force and returned it back to Germany. Since then, the crew has been detained. The crew was all Russian, although it was a Panamanian-flagged vessel. And now, recently, we've actually been able to hear that Germany has replaced the crew on the oil tanker, Everton, from Russia's Shadow Fleet, which it detained in mid-March, and has taken control of the vessel, including its cargo, the German finance ministry said. The Panamanian-flagged Everton was carrying oil from the Russian port of Ust-Luga in January. Then the tanker malfunctioned and was towed to the German coast. Last week, Spiegel reported that the Everton was carrying 100,000 tons of oil. The confiscation of this vessel may be the first time an EU country has taken such a step since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's not just the first step, it is the first step. We've never seen anything like this before in the entire history of the conflict, and it is quite a move by the Germans to confiscate a Russian shadow tanker and then turn it around and put it back into their service, and also sell the cargo, I guess, on the behalf of a German company that didn't even own the cargo in the first place. So a little bit interesting to see that, and I gotta say, good on the Germans for continuing to move forward with trying to interdict Russian economic activities that are attempting to circumvent the sanctions as much as they possibly can. Moving on from that, though, and out of Germany, we were able to hear some more unfortunate news coming out of Pokrovsk, at least recently, as recovery operations are still underway to try and get the M88 recovery vehicle out of the lake that it fell into. According to the information that we have right now, recovery efforts continue at the Pokrovsk training ground in eastern Lithuania for a U.S. Army an M88A2 Hercules armored recovery vehicle and the bodies of 4 American soldiers with the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, suggesting that the soldiers had been found somehow still inside the vehicle and most likely drowned when the vehicle fell 16 feet under the water. The vehicle did sink 16 feet into the mud of a swamp during a training exercise on Tuesday, and heavy equipment is continuing to arrive at the site, including Lithuania's heaviest dredger and several industrial water pumps, which plan to pump enough water onto the site to eventually allow the dredger to extract the mud-water mixture and reach the M88A2. We can actually see some of these recovery processes underway right here. Interestingly enough, we can actually see an excavator, a tracked excavator, with some sort of a pontoon float attached to it for its trackage assembly, which is pretty unique. I've actually never seen that before. We can also see...
That's massive, by the way. That's like a whole boat underneath that thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely ginormous. I've never seen anything like that before. And we can also see them moving that specific floating excavator right there into the area closer to the M88. We can also see that they brought in some sort of a pontoon sort of a system that may be the dredger into the area as well. And then we also got to see that they are continuing to try and pour a watery mixture into the area so that way they'll eventually be able to pretty much soak up most of that sludge and then finally access the vehicle. It's very unfortunate to hear that 4 U.S. service members appear to have been lost at this point. Once again, we still haven't gotten official word and confirmation. This is the the best supposing that we have been able to get is that there are apparently bodies that are being recovered, although I don't believe there's still been an official announcement by the U.S. Department of Defense about the death of these 4 service members. So with that in mind, we're working off of this point based off of the little bit of information that we have that the U.S. soldiers actually were inside the M88 recovery vehicle, and they are now presumed dead due to drowning. It's unfortunate to hear about that, but it is good to know that we were finally able to get to the bottom of the story, and it does appear that it was an unfortunate case of drowning, which is, of course, very sad to hear, and unfortunate to know that the families of those service members will be hearing about that news probably fairly soon, at least if the information that we're working with is correct. But moving on from that unfortunate news out of Lithuania and on into some more news down inside the Middle East, we have been able to hear of something that appears to be a little bit interesting, probably very interesting as a matter of fact, as we were able to hear that apparently the Israelis are enraged over the signal leak. According to Apex, that posted this today, Israeli officials are furious over the signal chat leak involving senior administration officials in the United States because it included sensitive information Israel provided to the U.S. from the human intelligence source in Yemen, and that's according to a CBS News report. So it appears that at this point, while some people have been saying that there wasn't any classified information released in the Signal group chat, it appears that there was, because according to CBS News, apparently Israeli officials are absolutely infuriated that a good amount of the confidential information that they provided to the United States was disseminated through a group chat to the chief editor of The Atlantic because he was accidentally added into the group chat by someone who wasn't paying that much attention. It is a bit of an interesting thing with that. There's not really much more to add, but it does appear that there was some resulting backlash, at least in the international intelligence community, because of the slip-up. But moving on from that and down into western Yemen, we were able to hear that the top officials, some of the top officials of the Yemeni Houthis have been killed. We can tell they're top officials because they wear red berets and they look like cheap military guys from a low-budget movie. But beyond that, we have been able to hear that Houthi-affiliated media in Yemen is reporting that General Abd al-Khaliq al-Houthi, the brother of the Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi, as well as the commander of the Republican Guard and several other units with the Houthi Ministry of Defense, were killed in a recent U.S. precision strike alongside Houthi Chief of General Staff Major General Muhammad Abdul Karim al-Gamari. They have incredibly long names in western Yemen, and several other senior leaders and officers in the Houthi Defense Ministry. So it appears that the U.S. airstrike recently was able to pretty much take out most of the Houthis' abilities to command and control. It appears that the top guy hasn't been killed yet, but we were able to confirm that all of these guys and their absurdly long names were taken out today in some of the American airstrikes. Once again, incredibly good to hear, and we love to hear it because it's letting us know that the Yemeni Houthis are probably going to be a little bit worse for wear, at least when it comes to conducting acts of piracy on the high seas. And they think they're some sort of pirates or something dressed up like that. Honestly, man, this looks like Spirit Halloween costumes that would be labeled like military soldier or something like that. These just look cheap.
They look like phonies. I'm telling you what, very, very cheap. And also their expertise is very cheap too. That's why they're getting wiped out in mass too.
Yeah, man, and meanwhile, while this guy is sitting around in a cheap military uniform, you have some guy back here dressed up like, I don't even know, it looks like he's maybe in a dress, I can't really tell, but with a bandolier for rifle cartridges slung over him. It's really cheap kind of a look here. I'd have to be honest with y'all, don't really think the Houthis are having any rollies wandering around anytime soon. But moving on from that, we were also able to hear that the United States is continuing to conduct reconnaissance missions on the Islamic Republic of Iran. We were able to hear that another MQ-4 Triton was sent into the area of the Persian Gulf and was conducting reconnaissance operations near to the Iranian coastline just recently. Once again, showing us the United States is still gathering more intelligence and reconnaissance so that way they'll be able to operate off of that in war planning here in the near future. And that's coming at the exact same time as we were able to hear that more B-2 bombers have shown up at Diego Garcia. 5 B-2 Spirit bombers are now visually confirmed on the tarmac at Diego Garcia, up from 3. And that's interesting to note, because we already thought that all 4 of the actual covered shelters were filled with B-2s, so this actually means that an even higher number of B-2 Spirits are at the base than originally assumed. This is actually putting the number closer to 9 at this point of active B-2 bombers, meaning that quite literally half of the U.S. stealth bomber fleet is currently at Diego Garcia right now. So it is once again showing us that the United States of America is moving a decent amount of aircraft with a large amount of firepower into the area to be positioned to be used against the Islamic Republic of Iran here within the very near future. And it's most likely going to be showing us that there's going to be blood in the water, at least in this area. But moving on from the Middle East, as that was an interesting little summary in itself, but we have even more to cover. We were able to hear in the Western Pacific, relating to the Middle Eastern news, that the USS Carl Vinson has just departed Guam today, as the USS Carl Vinson departed Guam on Friday, is now headed towards U.S. Central Command to join the Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group, according to U.S. Navy intelligence. So very nice to hear that we are going to be looking at 2 aircraft carriers, or carrier strike groups, active in the area. And once again, we largely believe that the Nimitz and the USS Carl Vinson are not being deployed to the area because of the Houthis. They're most likely being deployed into the area because of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the future military actions that are going to be conducted by the United States of America against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So once again showing us the United States is still getting on a war footing by every single means. We're conducting reconnaissance on the Iranians. We are conducting more buildups of stealth bombers to prepare for air operations. We are currently bombing their proxy forces, and we're also moving an additional 2 carrier strike groups into the area here very soon. Everything's adding up to show that there is going to be inevitably a war within the region, most likely against the Islamic Republic of Iran, if they do not commit to denuclearizing here within the next month and about 2 weeks or so. We also got to hear in really big news, before we get on into the Ukrainian news, that in Beijing, what's up Beijing, Xi Jinping has stopped the Panama port deals. Some of y'all may remember this. Some of y'all may actually remember the entire thing. How we talked about the Panamanian government may be compromised by heavy ties to the People's Republic of China. Some people said that we were lying, and that's absolutely absurd, and that couldn't be the case. And then the United States government put a lot of pressure on them, and then the Panamanian government said we're going to be getting rid of our economic ties to China so that way they don't control us. And then the company C.K. Hutchison followed along with that and said that we're going to be selling off our ports of Cologne and Cristobal, actually Cristobal and let me make sure I get the other one correct, Balboa, to BlackRock investment firm in the United States. Xi Jinping was infuriated about that, all of this proving that the Panamanian government was most likely compromised by the heavy financial ties that the People's Republic of China had with the country. And then finally today we are now hearing that Xi Jinping doesn't want to give up his control of the nation of Panama and their critical port infrastructure, as we are now hearing that the Chinese are going to be stopping the Panama port deal, as China has blocked the C.K. Hutchinson's plan for selling the Panama Canal ports to BlackRock. The $19 billion deal was delayed, and the ports handle 3% of global seaborne trade, quite a large number. And it appears that Beijing said, according to John Conrad, hell no. So it appears
that's a big mess up by that company, by the way, because I think China had some plausible deniability while that company was in charge of it, that maybe the CCP didn't have direct control of the canal. But now that the company said, we're going to go ahead and sell it to the American company, that has forced the Chinese government to step in and actually become the face of the issue, which makes it very obvious what was really going on there. So I'm sure that's why Mr. Winnie the Pooh is very, very upset that they did that, because now they're taking full responsibility for it.
Absolutely. They are taking full responsibility for pretty much using that as economic leverage against Panama. It clearly shows at this point, for some people who doubted our analysis, not to toot our own whistle, but sometimes we do, that our analysis was dead on the nail on this one, and a possible return of the Panama Canal Zone to the United States of America may be of strategic significance, because if the Chinese are fighting this hard to keep their control over those ports and the economic influence that it has over Panama, it is clearly showing that that is for clandestine interests, considering that the People's Republic of China hardly ever uses the Panama Canal even for just global maritime trade, or much less war. This means that they are wanting to control the nation of Panama to have control over a vital economic artery for the United States of America that passes through the very middle of the nation of Panama, which would be the Panama Canal Zone. So, once again, it appears that our analysis was largely correct back then. Very nice to hear, good to see. But anyways, moving on from that little bit of news coming out of China today, it is time for us to move on back into Ukraine, because we have quite a good bit of news right here. And I gotta tell y'all, we are absolutely cruising through this news tonight. I actually cannot believe how quickly we've gotten through most of this. Honestly, this is going a little bit faster than I was expecting it to. But nevertheless,
honestly, cruising for a bruising at this point, man. You're cruising too fast. Cruising as fast as a B2 on the way to Diego Garcia.
Man, and those things don't cruise fast at all, honestly. Like, the B2s are actually pretty slow. Did you know that, Matthew? Did you know that?
How fast are they, really?
Well,
628.
628.
Miles
728?
per hour.
Let me check. Maximum speed 630 miles per hour. It's subsonic.
Wow, that's still pretty fast, actually.
Man, that is as fast as a commercial airliner right there. So it's not going like incredibly fast. It's not like an F-18 or anything like that, going Mach 1.6 or something along those lines. But still, it is quite a bomber. It's a very amazing one, an interesting one. But a bomber that actually can go fast, and the U.S. Air Force has used it a bit, at least here a while ago, was the B-1 Lancer. This is a fast one. Let me go and get you all the exact speed on that as my voice just cracked right there. Let me go get the speed on that. And let's see. The maximum speed of this aircraft is,
830 miles per hour, it says right there.
so about Mach 1. Actually, it's about Mach 1.3. It's Mach 1.25. So it just kind of gets a little bit into the supersonic realm. Funnily enough, at this thing's top speed, this B-1 Lancer actually has the same top speed as an F-100 Super Sabre, which I call the catfish because it has a mouth like a catfish. But this thing can actually get up to Mach 1.3, and this thing was put into service back in 1954. So that thing is quite old to be going that fast. A little bit crazy when you think about it, because right after this was put into service, what's even crazier, man, is that the F-4 Phantom would get put into service just a few years later. You can actually see that right there. It was manufactured from 1958, put into service in 1960. So it came only about 6 years after the F-100. The F-100 was, I believe, one of the first supersonic aircraft in U.S. service. I think it was actually the first supersonic aircraft in U.S. Air Force service. And then the F-4 Phantom, I believe, was the first Mach 2 aircraft in U.S. Air Force service only 6 years later. Once again, showing you the leaps and bounds that were being made in aircraft technology during that period of time to go from being subsonic to supersonic in really, twice the speed of sound in really less than 10 years. Pretty impressive when you think about that. But there it is, right there, the F-4 Phantom. That was the aircraft that we were speaking of right there. We're trying to pad the time a little bit. But we are going to get back into the news because we were able to hear that in the Russian Federation today, there was something interesting that happened in Saratov, as we were able to hear that there was a fire at the Research Institute of Chemical Currents, and that was an interesting kind of a fire to have. I guess the chemical currents were currenting a little bit too much, and they became chemical and caught on fire. But we could see a little plume of smoke from the distance over there, and it does appear that there's a little fire going on in Saratov right now. This is fairly close to the Ingles Air Base, which is on the other side of the Volga River, but once again, no correlation or relation to the two. It appears that this fire is completely separate. It may have been created by some form of a saboteur or something along those lines, but we can't really tell for certain, at least at this point, because it does appear that there has been no information beyond the fact that there is a plume of smoke coming from the Research Institute in the city of Saratov. And so we'll be moving on from that news and the limited amount of information that we have on it, and we'll now be moving on down into the area of Kyiv, because we've actually gotten a decent amount of diplomatic developments today. A great deal, as a matter of fact, from all of the things that have been thrown Zelensky's way and all the things that he's thrown right back. Starting off, many of y'all will know that we spoke about the mineral deal yesterday, which really isn't a mineral deal. It's more so give us everything y'all have sort of a deal. It appears that the Ukrainians have now rejected the mineral deal, and Zelensky has stated that Ukraine will not sign the mineral agreement in the current version presented by the United States. That was a statement put out by the Washington Post today, but once again is a statement directly from Zelensky. It appears that the Ukrainians are not willing to give away everything. How ungrateful of them. Can they say thank you once? I mean, all we wanted to do, Matthew, was take control of all of their coal, all of their iron deposits, all of their minerals, like all of them, their energy grid, their economic infrastructure, their railroads, the toilets, maybe the plumbing, maybe some water treatment facilities as well. I mean, it was just a little bit of stuff. It wasn't even that big. It couldn't be just at least...
I mean, honestly, why couldn't they just at least given over at least, like, for example, the Verkhona Radi or something like that? They could have given over something as a goodwill gesture, because it seems like Ukraine needs to be a little bit more grateful. Like, either hand over the nuke plants, hand over, the entire country or something like that. Show some gratefulness.
I mean, really, this is just shitty of the Ukrainians. I'll be entirely honest with y'all. The ungratefulness to not even want to give this minimum. I mean, we could have asked for more. We could have asked for all of their firstborn children. We could have asked for large real estate brokerage. We could have asked for the entire area of Western Ukraine, developing into a casino and golf course. I mean, there's many things that we could have asked for that were quite reasonable for what we've given them. But nevertheless, we only asked them for a bare minimum to control all of their critical infrastructure that is vital for their national security interests, and they said no. I mean, this is ridiculous, folks. I honestly have to say, I'm getting a little bit tired of the Ukrainians, and they're starting to aggravate me a little bit with this uppityness that they have, that they can control their vital shit. This is outrageous. Like, this is absolutely annoying. Ridiculous, I'd say. Ridiculous. But also, I have to say, in all honesty, getting past the jokes, this was coming around the corner. If y'all actually saw the minerals, the quote unquote mineral deal, it wasn't really about minerals. It was just more so about having control of everything that was critical to Ukraine's governmental and national function, and having it brought under the thumb of the United States, which obviously any country would refuse. Because even if you are in a position where your country is going to be lost, what's worse, losing your country to the Russians, or literally giving away everything that would be needed to run your country to the United States? You're losing your country either way at that point. So a lot of people would rather take their gamut at fighting to keep it instead of just giving it away for free. That's largely how it's being viewed. Zelensky also added that he's not going to be repaying the United States for any of the military support that they have sent or are going to send, because the state of Ukraine doesn't view it as a loan or anything else for that line where they have to repay it. They considered it a financial investment into the country, or just military aid, as it's plainly been given in the past. That's how it was in most other conflicts previous or prior. Like, for example, just got to put this out there, the United States never wanted money back from the Taliban. You see, we invaded them in 2001, back when that whole thing was a deal. But before that, we were friends with them, and they weren't called the Taliban, they were called the Mujahideen. And the Mujahideen was fighting the Soviet Union, so we gave them all kinds of cool little goodies. AIM-92 Stingers, you name it, we gave it to them. And we never asked for repayment on that stuff. On top of that, we've given a load of equipment to all kinds of other countries, and we've never asked for repayment. I think the biggest example that I could give of that is probably the state of Israel. They have a $22 billion military budget, and then we give them another $20 billion, or $21 billion roughly, every single year, on top of their military budget in military equipment. So we give them, the state of Israel spends $1, and for every dollar that they spend on weaponry, we match them dollar for dollar practically on military support, given directly to them, no repayment ever asked. And that is something that I think is honestly fine. Like, I'd say that that's completely reasonable. I mean, we give the Israelis an additional $20 billion of military equipment every year, and they do quite a good bit of damage whenever they need to in the area. I mean, it's not a bad deal. But then we give $20 billion a year to Ukraine, which is actually the amount we generally have given so far. And then we want to act like that's breaking the bank and we have to have that money back. No, it's like, that's not how it works. We're giving the military equipment to them because it's an investment into protecting our interests and their interests. It just so happens to be that them protecting our interests is also stopping them from being steamrolled by the Russians. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone, for the large part. And on top of that, we were going to get rid of this equipment anyways. All of the equipment that we gave them is 40 years old. It's so old that there's dust on it, on everything. And so for that reason, we were going to demolish it. So why in the world are we going to go and bury all of this stuff in the desert or detonate it when we could just give it to Ukraine, because we're already chalking it up as a loss at that point, and let them use it instead? That, to me, would make a lot more sense. And it makes a lot more sense that they did that way. And so I don't really think that the Ukrainians owe us anything, because we were literally giving them the junk, the scraps that we were throwing out. Man, honestly, man, think about running a restaurant that way, man. Like, you're running a restaurant, like, you cook up all this food, all of these breads, it's not all bought up by the end of the day, so you're going to get rid of it and throw it away. And you go out to the homeless people and you go, hey, would you like this unused loaf of bread that I'm about to throw away? And they go, oh yeah. And then you go, okay, give me $20. Like, and it's like, what? But you're already going to throw that. What? Yeah. It's like, but you're already going to throw that away. I'm be grateful. Say thank you. It's like, oh, come on. It's like that would be ridiculous.
A little bit different. It's a little bit out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little out there, and that's almost what we're doing in this kind of an instance. Like it's a little bit odd to me. But moving on from that, we also were able to hear that apparently the Ukrainians have had a bit of an issue. This one's a bit of a big one. Zelensky has stated that there's been no communication from the U.S. on monitoring energy ceasefire agreements so far. Meaning that the entire time that the ceasefire has been in effect, which has been about 2 days or 3 days, the U.S. has been monitoring it a single day to see if it's being broken by either party. So the Russians can hit the Ukrainians, and at this point, because the U.S. hasn't been monitoring the ceasefire, there really is nothing to say either way. It's just really Russia's word against Ukraine's as far as it's going, because the United States hasn't actually monitored the ceasefire at all. So that's great. Apparently, Zelensky also warned the U.S. that the ceasefire won't work without any kind of monitoring in place. And Zelensky also stated that Kyiv received a draft of the minerals deal, which was entirely different, and they refused to accept it. And also, Zelensky said that he won't accept any deal that threatens Ukraine's integration into the European Union. So it appears that there has been a bit of a roadblock today in that kind of an instance. We also got to hear that apparently a foreign contingent, a closed-door meeting will take place in Kyiv within the week, with countries 100% ready to deploy a contingent to Ukraine, according to Zelensky's words. I don't really know what that means in exact wordage, if that means there's going to be foreign armies inside of Ukraine fighting on their behalf, or there's just going to be liaisons or something like that. Not entirely sure, or advisors. Not entirely definitely certain on that. But it is interesting here that they're going to be bringing in more folks from all around the great wide world to get involved in helping out Ukraine against the Russian Federation. Nice to hear for the large part. And moving on from that, we also got to hear the air defense report as well, as 163 drones attacked Ukraine overnight, 89 of them were shot down, and 51 drones did not reach their targets due to electronic warfare interference, meaning that approximately 140 of the drones were shot down and only about 22 or 23 of them made it through, which means that the interception rate was still fairly high, and great to hear that the Ukrainians are still able to intercept and destroy a large amount of those Russian drones. But before we move on into the remainder of our news, which is pretty much the frontline news itself, I want to make sure that we get to this interesting question that Matthew has asked all of y'all. Today, Russia struck Ukraine's largest energy company in a major attack, breaking the ceasefire deal, which they already have broke, really, many times before. But they did it today in big enough form that you really can't ignore it. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this one. And some people are saying, oh, this is it. This will end positive U.S. relations with the Russians. The Russians are cooked. Others are saying that nothing will change as a result of this. Some are saying that there's a 50-50 chance of either option, and some people are unsure and undecided on this one. But Matthew, I got to ask you, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about this as well?
All right. So 42% of the audience said this will end positive U.S. relations, while 35% said nothing will change as a result, and 17% said it's a 50-50 chance of either option. And I would say personally that I think this is the start of the end of positive U.S. relations with the Russian regime. I think this is going to be the start of the downfall of Putin's relations with the current government, because Putin has drawn this line in the sand that unless the Zelensky government is gone, then there can be no peace talks. And that is going to be a barrier to future peace talks. And once again, I think he broke the ceasefire today for probably the 10th or 15th time. I'm not sure which one it is at this point, but he broke the ceasefire deal here multiple times over. The last time he broke it and there was no real response. This time, today, he broke it, and then there really hasn't been a chance for a response yet from the United States, but I think there might eventually be one. So I think I'm with the 42%. I think this is going to end the positive relations. But Enforcer, what say you?
In my opinion, I think this probably will end positive relations. There's no way to recover from it because the Russian Federation is making it wildly clear that they are not considering the United States to be a respected nation, and they're constantly disrespecting us at this point. They're disrespecting us by saying that the Ukrainian government has to be removed in full for them to even talk about ending the war. They're disrespecting us by violating the ceasefire that they agreed to. There are a multitude of other disrespects that they've given to the United States and Ukraine today over the course of months at this point, since the new president has taken charge, that really can't be ignored at this point if you want to be taken seriously. Otherwise, you're just going to be taken as an absolute schmuck and a fool by everyone in the world, and eventually, it's got to come to an end. And I think that this may be where it's coming to an end, and U.S.-Russian relations may finally start to deteriorate. Well, honestly, honestly, they're not really starting to deteriorate. They never existed. It's just that the president's belief that there was a good relationship with Russia may finally start to deteriorate. Let's put it that way, because that's probably the best way to put it. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And Matthew, I understand that we actually have some very juicy questions that have come in so far. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night, we have a very generous $50 donation from Rick Galenshin, and thank you very much, Rick, for that $50 support and helping to keep the channel running, and we sincerely do appreciate that. Once again, our Canadian viewer, he said that today POTUS had a phone conversation with Canada's new Prime Minister, and POTUS actually referred to Canada as a country.
Oh, that's good to hear. I like to hear it. It's a good thing to hear, a good thing to see. Because Canada is a country, it's not a state. But that's very interesting, Rick, that you shared that with us, and I got to thank you for the massive support. I think that there's been some understandings in the background that probably been made that that's a terrible idea for a multitude of reasons. And you know, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this a lot, and this is something that hit me, folks. I was thinking about this solidly for a good minute, but I think I'm going to be honest with y'all and tell y'all something that I think may also be a reason why they would never do that. So if you actually annexed Ukraine in the United States, say, and you turned it into a state, like you didn't actually create states out of each province of Canada, you just turned the whole thing into one state, do you know what's going to happen? Like, not on a foreign policy level, but on a domestic political level, is that the House of Representatives and the Senate, well, really the House of Representatives specifically, is going to be skewed forever politically in a certain direction. Just to be entirely frank with you all, currently the President of the United States is a Republican, and considering that most of Canada, at least politically, leans more towards the left, if you actually integrated Canada as a state in the United States, and they were just one state, the provinces weren't divvied up, and it was just one state, that means that there would be a permanent far left-leaning skew in the Congress for good from that point on. So I was thinking, every time he said that, I was like, wouldn't that be going against the ambitions of his own political party to do something like that? Like, at least politically in the long term, with how that would affect the House and the Senate. And like, I think that may be something, just being entirely frank, that finally was realized, is that someone said, but if we do that, this is going to happen. And he was like, pump the brakes, pump the brakes, we can't do that one anymore, because, like, what else could we do? Because if you annex Canada, the whole thing can't be a territory. I mean, there's so many people living in there that it would they would be able to apply for statehood, and their statehood would most likely be ratified by the Congress. So then at that point, you're seeing that the entire nation of Canada is skewing the House of Representatives forever, most likely. So then that would be a major issue, because if you ever look, like, just speaking very plainly and very balanced about this, not trying to go in any kind of a specific political leaning here, but if you ever look at the history of the United States, states usually are never ratified to become states as a singular entity. Usually they are ratified two at a time, and one of them has to be Republican leaning and one of them has to be Democrat leaning, at least as far as American modern history goes. That's why you'll see that the last two states accepted into the U.S. were pretty much accepted both at the same time. It was Hawaii and Alaska. Even back then, Hawaii and Alaska were two totally separate political parties, at least, believed in two political parties that were completely separate at the time. I believe Alaska was still Republican back then, and Hawaii was still Democrat, so they brought both of them in at the same time for that reason, because no matter what, the balance in the Senate wasn't being disturbed. There would be a guarantee, 2 new Republican and 2 new Democrat senators, which means that both parties were amicable enough about accepting them into statehood for them to finally become a U.S. state. That's why you'll never see, like, just to also add on to this as far as how, like, the political game works in America, that's why you'll see that America will never have a 51st state. We will have a 52nd state, because if we ever have a 51st state, which would be Puerto Rico, there's going to have to be another state added simultaneously that makes sure to maintain a balance in the Senate of so many senators guaranteed being Republican and so many of them guaranteed being Democrat. That's largely how it always works, and so that's why Puerto Rico will never really be able to join as a standalone 51st state. It would become the 51st state, but it also would be joined immediately with the 52nd state, being added into the country. So I hope that kind of like addresses that somewhat well, at least with how that's working. So I think that may be something that's understood in the background. And also, just on the foreign policy side of things, getting out of like a neutral political analysis of things and speaking about it fairly and how it's always worked, as far as foreign policy would go, the United States invading Canada would be considered an aggressive act violating the sovereignty of a nation in under the UN Charter to such a severe degree, practically everyone in the world would sanction us. The Chinese would be more than happy to. Russia would. India would. Everyone in the Western Pacific would. The Europeans certainly would at this point. Everyone would take a good shot at screwing over the Americans economically to the point that we wouldn't have a leg to stand on by the time that was over. So that's also another major thing to be considered, is that you really can't go around doing whatever, whenever, because there would be severe consequences for it. Although I do have to say, like, in all fairness, Canada is a really beautiful country. I mean, have y'all seen the provincial park of Silos? Look at that. I mean, that's just gorgeous out there.
That is pretty nice looking. I like that a lot.
Bro, they got that bear.
Oh, look, a bear. They got the whole bear out here, man. Look at that.
Man, it's throwing that thing back. Like, holy moly. But beyond that, pretty cool place. Crazily enough, the whole area, this whole area of Canada and the northeast, the northwest, looks like that. Like, you can go all the way out here pretty much to these national forests. And it looks just like that out there, too. It's a really pretty place, actually. You know, something that I've always found interesting about these areas, just to share this with y'all, I think this is really cool. Firewatch Tower. Let me go see if I can show y'all one of these. Because these are just always so cool to me. These Firewatch Towers. Have y'all ever seen these before?
Yeah, I've seen these in the Smokey the Bear, like a commercial or something like that, I think.
Yeah, these are really cool. So apparently people live in these for extended durations of time, pretty much on their own, and they just look out for any kind of smoldering fires anywhere in the woods, and if there is one, they report it, so that way they can try and put out any kind of wildfires before they really get out of control. So pretty cool. Like, there's a load of these in the Northwest. Like, tons of them, I think. But they're really cool. I always thought that they were wildly neat. But anyways, I thought I'd just share that with y'all. I thought it was cool. Maybe there's... Yeah, here's what the inside of these look like.
Honestly, somebody lives in this full-time to just watch for fires?
Yeah.
That seems kind of wild, actually, because you got to stay up here all the time in that little small box just all the time. That's kind of, like, rough.
Well, I mean, you can wander around and stuff, you know, you're not, like, contained to the parameters of the box. You can, like, walk around and do your own thing from time to time. But generally, yeah, you kind of have to stay up here and just look out for fires. That's largely a part of your job for a good amount of the day. But also, man, you know, something else that's pretty rough about these is that there's no plumbing.
No plumbing at all? So what do they do with that?
Well, there's usually a porta potty down at the bottom that they use, and it's serviced every once in a while. But it's a very Spartan kind of a lifestyle to be in a fire lookout anywhere in the country. You can actually see a little view from one up there. They have very nice views, though. I mean, the view is top notch. But living in one, that's a pretty rough thing right there, actually. But anyways, moving on from that. And on out of that little side note, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But a big thanks to you once again, Rick Galinchin, for the support and help with this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you that make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wellness LSA Latvia, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Wellness, as always, for that support and being a long-time channel legend as well. Wellness says, thank you, Enforcers, for the great job. And thank you, Wellness, by the way. We appreciate that. He said, I'm always here for the best source and news delivery.
And I got to thank you so much for the support. Wilderness LSA Latvia, the first super chat of the night. I got to thank you massively for that, and also being the hoof trimmer of the LSA from Latvia. And I also got to say thank you so much for always being here for the best source and news delivery, because we always try our best. And tonight, it is a race against time, because I'm wanting to make sure to round this thing out at the exact right time so we can get to sleep, because if I get to sleep at the right time tonight, I will get a whopping 4 hours of sleep before I have to go get on a plane and then be, like, pretty much transiting the entirety of the United States on a plane for 7 whopping hours. So I cannot wait. It's going to be so much fun. And so with that, I actually, to be entirely honest with y'all, I'm actually really excited for this trip. And hopefully it's as fun and as cool as I think it's going to be. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that I was addressed that well. And thank you for always being here and being a channel legend, Wilderness LSA Latvia, and helping to support the channel tonight on our last night on air before we're back on Wednesday for live streaming. And so with that, we are on to our final super chat of this segment. And then we're going to be moving on back into the news.
All right, and this one goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And huge shout out to Zyper for also supporting the channel all the time, and we do appreciate that well from Zyper while I stutter and stammer. But they said coffee fund for the enforcers, and if the war don't end by the end of the year, we should send Russia back to the Stone Age by economists and power if needed.
I would agree. I would agree actually on that wholeheartedly, as a matter of fact. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because I would say that the Russians have to be brought back to the Stone Age if they can't behave, because they got to learn a thing or two about acting like idiots. Otherwise, they're going to keep acting like idiots. Stupid actions have to have good consequences to them. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And a huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to get on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight. And we have quite a plenty. We were able to see little Akhmat on the street. Oh, little Akhmat on fire on the street. A little Akhmat blowing up on the street. Like, oh, look at that. Ooh.
Oh, damn. Little Akhmat going boom.
Dude, the little Akhmat blew up. the little Akhmat's gone. But still, that was wild to see. We also got to see today a little clip from Patrick Lancaster. Patrick Lancaster went to Suza. We all know him. He's the #1 traitor of the nation, a traitor to the Republic. And he went there today and he tried to talk to the citizens of Suza, the town, and asked them, what atrocities did the Ukrainians conduct against your person? And the answer pretty much by everyone was none. So here is the clip, and I'll be reading those subtitles. We'll be muting the clip, but here is the subtitles. How was it when Ukrainians were here? When were the Ukrainians here? Yes. That's how it was. Nothing changed. They didn't bother you? Oh, to tell the truth? Yes, the only truth. Only the truth. They didn't do anything to us. Nothing at all. They passed by, back and forth. Greatest. Good evening. Oh, what else? Good morning. That's what I picked up from their words. That's it. I don't know anything else. I don't know anything more. And when we were sitting, my friend was sitting there too. She was sick, very sick, I tell you. I said to them, you greatest, but you could at least bring some bread or water. And they brought it. They brought bread and water. Came over, introduced themselves. They asked what my name is. I said, Liuda. When the Ukrainian troops were here, where were you? Yes. How was it? Normal. I can't do that voice anymore. What did they do here? How did it go? Well, just the most ordinary people, that's all. We didn't bother them. They didn't bother us. But they didn't hurt us either. Us specifically, our street. I'm not speaking for others. I'm speaking for our street. That's how it was. Just as Liuda described it. What else can I add? Got it. Well, and this... And that was the end of the clip. Apparently, Patrick Lancaster wasn't getting the kind of content he was looking for in Suza. He was like, what kind of atrocities did they conduct? Oh, they left the water on. Oh, my God. Moving on from that.
Not the water. Oh, my God. They wasted the town water. They're war criminals.
Not the water. But anyway, moving on from that, we did get to see some Russians getting hit by FPV drones near Popovka in the Belgorod region. You see the drone coming on down. It's about to be hitting them fresh. Oh, fresh like baked bread from Publix. And oh my goodness.
Getting them good.
Whoa. Look at that boiler.
Whoa. Look at that toiler.
Man, honestly, man, the toiler is the funniest one. Like,
yes,
honestly,
I think so.
Yeah, I think the toiler is the best one. Meanwhile, moving on from that and into the location unknowns, we also got to see some interesting clips here. As a couple of foreign fighters survived during an ambush. We won't be able to show that one. That's apparently too spicy. I didn't think it was. We also get to see this Ukrainian Strela unit sitting out near the front. Really cool to see Strelas. We like Strelas. And we also got to see this Humvee here that's been modified into a Katusha with arm-mounted R-73s on board. That is actually a wild modification. Absolutely goated. This is almost a Ukrainian version of the M998 Avenger system. We also got to see that the Russians are worshipping that pipeline that they used to get into Suza. This is a replica of the pipeline, and there is a literal line there of people trying to get into the pipe so that way they can crawl through it and be excellent like the Russians that died in the hundreds crawling through this pipe.
That is so goofy. Oh my God, that is so goofy.
Across the pipeline. Look, I'm so cool.
Do they get the gas and everything when they get in there too?
Yeah, but I don't think so. But also, Matthew, I like the police here, or whatever these are supposed to be, because in Russian, Matthew, that says D&D. So I guess it's like Dungeons and Dragons, but the police form. I don't know, because that I've never seen police with that on their jackets before. I guess that's security, maybe. But there's a
Yeah,
literal
that is
line.
just so dumb. Like, it's just so dumb. It's like, oh my God. One of the Russians that went through the real pipe, they came out and their lungs were all messed up from the gas that was in the pipe.
Yeah, like they're not even able to get oxygen into their blood because their lungs are coated with oil vapors and stuff like that. It was
Yeah.
icky, and the Russians are worshiping that pipe. We also got to see that they're worshiping that pipe like Hot Dog Man worships his. But we also got to see this Ukrainian demining machine right here. Look at it, beautiful little system. It's actually made in Ukraine by Ukrainians for Ukrainians. Very nice. I actually like its style. It's a very clean vehicle. But moving on from that, we also got the Russian casualty report. And hold on to your socks, folks. Y'all about to get blown away here. Blown away with a win. If it loads, big thanks to Elon for running Twitter amazingly. I've never seen this many server failures in my life. Come on, Jack. Come on. And any second now, the Russian casualty report will pull itself up. It will be like a miracle. It will be absolutely incredible. Oh, the live long
Man, they didn't pick me up.
day.
I decided to set something and Mike just totally didn't pick me up. Come on, X, get with it.
Come on, X. While we're waiting, how's y'all's families? Are your families doing well? I hope they're doing well, because Twitter is not doing well right now. It's doing pretty bad. And let's see. I see a lot of people talking all kinds of stuff. The design is very human, and I'd agree. Eventually, Twitter will load. And come on, man. Come on, Jack. And it's almost loaded. It's almost loaded. See,
This is ridiculous. There it goes. Look at that.
This is efficiency. This is the efficiency that Elon's been talking about. If you fire 90% of Twitter, you will be promised to get good results. And good results means that people will be on Twitter longer because they're just waiting for the damn thing to load. But moving on into the casualty report, it was something to see.
Oh, 0 Bobcats, though. That's a shame. That's a damn shame right there. They left it on 787 of all numbers right there. I don't like to see it. I wanted to see some Bobcat losses, but unfortunately, tell us more.
We were hitting records in other categories, though. 1,860 personnel is tied with December 21st of 2024 as the 7th highest day of the war. 61 drones is the 10th highest loss. 122 artillery systems is a brand new record. Y'all are looking at a record-breaking day today. 144 drones is the 25th highest, and 210 vehicles is a new daily loss record, meaning that we hit new daily records in 2 categories today. And also, the troop losses were wildly high. 1,860 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 61 APCs, 210 supply trucks, 17 main battle tanks, 122 artillery systems, 144 drones, 1 MLRS, and 1 anti-aircraft system. Absolutely crazy to see these kinds of losses. It's actually brutal to see that the Russians are taking losses that badly, and it's actually time for us to move y'all to the front line to where y'all can see when it happened and why it happened and how the sausage was made. Apparently that was a little too spicy, but they were getting wiped out in Vovchansk. It's kind of crazy. I've gotten so desensitized to most of this stuff. If there wasn't a not safe for work marker on them, I would just play them because they all look the same to me at this point. But moving on down to Krasnoyarsk, we also got to see a Russian drone getting hit by, a Russian Zala getting hit. And as they say, the old saying goes, Zala Zala bing, and bam, and they got it. And here comes the second one. Oh.
And a big boom on that one. Look at that. Bam. Boom.
We're Costco
Bing,
guys. Of course we buy in bulk. Boom. Or whatever. But we can see them just slamming Russians. Holy smokes. And that was the end of that clip. Moving on from that and down into the Seversk area, we also got to see the Ukrainians firing on the Russians with a tank in the 54th Brigade of all brigades, no less. Now here are the Ukrainians that are rolling the tank on up. That thing's a little tanky. Someone said, Elon, audit this channel. Like we're a part of the federal government. Like, it's like, I guess the audit's now extending to the private sector now. If they don't like it, they just get rid of you. But we can see...
Doge.
raid their house. Something like that. But we can see them just slamming the Russians up there in the tree line. And man, the Ukrainians are giving them no breaks. Also, I like how that person said that we're profiting off of war like Elon didn't. Didn't Elon provide Starlink to Ukraine and he was getting paid tens of millions of dollars a month to do that? I'd say that's profiting off the war far more than we're profiting off of it if this is profiting from it. That's just such a ludicrous thing. It's old as time. CNN can do it, gets a pass. Elon can do it, gets a pass. We cover the war. We work more hours and do more news coverage than anyone else working in the whole industry. And then people want to bitch about it. It's like I don't know how to work with that anymore. But I always get a laugh when people come in here and say stupid stuff like that. Like you're supposed to work for free. Like look, slavery has been long gone and done with in every corner of the world. I'm not working for free. Okay, like this is a job. So anyways. Moving on from that, nice to see the 54th Brigade absolutely slamming them. Moving on from that, and further on down the line in towards Pokrovsk, we also got to see a Leopard 2 tanking some hits, and it was tanking hits like a champ. And when you see the first Russian drone here coming in and hitting the Leopard 2, and it hit on the front turret
right
sheet.
On the front. Look, they got no image, too, after they smashed it.
And we now see them hitting
smash.
Right on the drone net. I'm sorry, I think there may have been some lag there. But we can now see them showing the damage, or at least the lack of damage, that happened to the Leopard 2.
They really fed this thing out with a lot of those, like, reactive tiles all over this one.
Yeah, like endless amounts of Contact 1. They love Contact 1. And we can see some dents from the shrapnel that hit. There was no direct hit that actually knocked out the Leopard. So it just tanked it and kept going, which is very impressive. And we see them here once again showing the other side, and it appears that the Leopard 2 pretty much got out of there completely unscathed, which is very impressive. But moving on from that and into Dnipro, we did get to see that, unfortunately, a major hotel, the Bartolomeo Hotel, was burning in the center of Dnipro after being hit by Russian drones overnight. Correction there. And we see the building burning. Unfortunately, there was a large amount of people inside, and we do not have a casualty report at this moment. We also were able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces were continuing to strike Russian forces throughout the entirety of northern Crimea. And we were able to see right here that it appears that they were hitting some kind of a facility on the side of a highway, it looked as though. We see them now slamming the Ural, and soon they're about to be slamming something else. Actually, I think this is a duplicate. We've seen this clip before. Sorry, everyone. It was presented as minty fresh today, and I didn't realize it until we were on air. Meanwhile, we also get to see the Ukrainian Marines in training with the 40th Brigade right here, and look at them go. The kit, the equipment, the absolute aura. It's undeniable. They were there, and they were kicking ass out there on that training field, and hopefully the 40th Separate Coastal Defense Brigade will be doing well once they're put into the service. But with that, it is now time for us to go on up to Kyiv and cover the speech from Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1,129 of the war. And tonight's speech is a little lengthy. It gives us time for some water and snacks. And so without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Здоров'я. Коротко про сьогодні. Ставка. Дуже детальне обговорення розвитку дронів в Україні, контракти, фінанси, технічні питання. Виробництво. Наше завдання чітке – збільшення постачання у війська, а також максимум технологічних переваг наших українських дронів. Сьогодні заслухав результати збиття шахедів дронами-перехоплювачами. Я хочу подякувати всім, хто розвиває цей напрямок. Працюємо над збільшенням виробництва реактивних дронів, також дронів на оптоволокні. Це дуже важливо саме зараз, одна з ключових речей, і потрібне достатнє постачання у війська. Також сьогодні ми говорили щодо нашої ракетної програми, максимального прискорення виробництва. Ми працюємо і над тим, щоб в Україні були побудовані свої виробництва зенітних ракетних комплексів, всіх необхідних систем протиповітряної оборони. Цими днями під час зустрічі в Європі та раніше в перемовинах з іншими партнерами ми говорили про локалізацію виробництв в Україні. Локалізацію деяких систем ППО локалізації ракет до них. Обов'язково треба прийти до цього. Я хочу подякувати всім нашим партнерам, які підтримують нас у такому промисловому і технологічному розвитку. І все, чого ми зараз досягаємо в Україні, це буде спільний результат всієї Європи. Наша спільна та довгострокова безпека. Сьогодні була також окрема і детальна доповідь міністра оборони України Рустема Умєрова, зокрема щодо пакетів підтримки від партнерів. Є хороші нові домовленості, є також розуміння, що вже у квітні має відбутись і нова зустріч в форматі Рамштайн. Німеччина, Британія очолюють формат, і саме зараз ми працюємо над змістовним наповненням. Я доручив міністру оборони України представити нашим американським партнерам всі факти пошкоджень нашої енергетичної інфраструктури в результаті російських обстрілів. Тільки за минулу добу був цілеспрямований російський удар дронами по газовій інфраструктурі на Полтавщині. А також був удар артилерії по Херсону, який пошкодив інфраструктуру забезпечення міста електрикою. Вчора ж в результаті одного з російських ударів по місту Харків було пошкодження інфраструктури теплопостачання. Все це говорить про те, що Росія буде зривати дипломатію і буде це робити і далі. І що є єдиною тактикою Москви залишається затягування війни. Путін на словах щось каже таке, наче він погоджується з американською стороною, але по факту російська армія просто продовжує тиснути всіма бойовими засобами. Відповідно, потрібен тиск на Росію, щоб дипломатія запрацювала. Україна ще 11 березня прийняла американську пропозицію щодо безумовного припинення вогню. І відтоді вся відповідальність за гальмування дипломатії на Росії. Сьогодні також узгодив кілька кадрових рішень, які мають посилити спроможності нашого захисту, авіаційну складову сил оборони. Була у нас зустріч з представниками громадського сектору, з військовими, офіс, які допомагають розвитку військової авіації. В розмові тоді взяла участь мама Джуса, героя України Андрія Підщикова, Лілія Авріянова. І ми погодили всі разом нову структуру для зміцнення авіаційної складової. А також погодили конкретні управлінські і технологічні кроки. Тепер призначення. У міністра оборони України буде спеціалізований заступник саме з питань бойової авіації. Буде Олександр Козенко. Він тривалий час займався адаптацією F-16 та «Міраж» в Україні. Генерал-майор Олексій Марченко служитиме тепер заступником начальника Генерального штабу України саме на цьому авіаційному напрямку. Бригадний генерал Сергій Голубцов буде заступником командувача повітряних сил. І полковник Олександр Дяків командувачем авіації, заступником командувача повітряних сил. Визначені чіткі терміни, коли нова управлінська структура має дати більше результатів і мотивації усьому авіаційному компоненту Сил оборони. Дякую всім, хто допомагає. Дякую всім нашим воїнам. Слава Україні!
And Ram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1,129 of the war. And that wraps up our news summary today, well ahead of schedule. And that's going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, howdy, what a stream it has been. We had a peak of viewership here of 9.2 thousand people that were on the air with us at the same time. And so far, 37,000 people have watched this stream for up to this point. It sounds like a low number, but considering that we've only been on air for an hour and 20 minutes, it actually is a pretty decent number, as a matter of fact. But before, dude, is it crazy or what, man? The bots are coming in with the exact same line now. Like, are you seeing that?
Yeah, coming in. I hope the IRS investigates you war grifters. Okay, thanks, buddy. You can go and take your 5 potato back to the FSB headquarters. A good job for you.
Dude, both of them, man, put in the same puppy-faced emoji thing on it, too. I was like, crazy. We got a new sort of bot mobilized against the channel now. It's like the 90th different variety of them. But beyond that, it is time for us to move on to that second segment of the stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. And it's going to be wildly fun. It's going to be great because we can talk about anything. But I do have to say, though, that we are making sure to try and keep this as short as we can tonight. We're trying to round this thing out as early as possible. And that's not to say that I'm going to be rushing through answering people's questions and super chats, but I'm not going to be rabbit holing to the umpteenth degree tonight because I do have to make sure to keep track of time so that way I can get some sleep. Because Matthew was just joking to me in the middle of the speech. He was like, man, are you going to like even sleep at all tonight? Because like really, you got to get up like at literally 4 a.m, which is when I usually go to sleep, to go to the airport. So I was like, well, maybe. I was like, it really depends on how we round this thing out. So with that, Matthew, I understand that we have quite a many super chats tonight and quite a good bit of live chats. Let's see if we can try and knock them all out in a reasonable and articulate amount of time.
Indeed. So let's jump into our final question segment of the night. And this one is going to go to our first one, the last segment. It goes to Howard Mendelson, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Howard, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And he said, Enforcer Matt, a question. 10 provinces. Shouldn't they get 10 states or 20 senators?
You would think so, but I'm largely working off of the statement when I was speaking about that earlier, that Canada is the 51st state. So I was really speaking about it as the entire thing was brought in as just one state. There were no provinces being divvied up into separate states like Alberta, Manitoba, and all that. They were all just going to become a part of the state of Canada. And that would be absolutely ridiculous. I think that Canada at that point would be the largest state in the United States by population and landmass. By far, like nothing would get close. And also, if that was the case, that entire population only gets 2 senators, and then not only that, they get an unlimited amount of representatives. I don't even know how many they would get. It would be like 80 or 90 of them, possibly. It would be quite a large number. That's all I could say on that. So, then you would be skewing a lot of things permanently. But technically, if you actually did, like, just to actually say, like, what if we did annex Canada? Technically, what would make sense is to divvy it up and create multiple different states out of Canada. But once again, a lot of these supposed states you create, there would almost be no one living in them. Like, for example, in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut, there's nobody there. So, like, practically, like, I think it would be like about 30,000 people would be getting like 2 senators. And then a lot of people would be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So then maybe Nunavut and the Northwest Territories and the Yukon would all turn into one giant state with practically no one living in it. But at the same time, it just makes no sense. And on top of that, why in the world would we want Canada in the first place? That's the part that I don't really get, is that there's really no reason to annex Canada and make it a part of the United States, because we get all of the benefits of having Canada as a friend without all of the responsibilities because they're their own country right now. So that would largely be my take on that. But yes, it would make more sense to divvy up the provinces and turn them into individual states instead of taking the whole of Canada and turning it into one state if you actually hypothetically did that, although that's a terrible idea. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And to some people who are saying this right now, because I already see it, so I want to get this one at the head. Oh, what the hell's wrong with you, you liberal, not wanting to invade Canada, you bastard? Listen, I'm just going with the original statements that the President of the United States made, that war is bad and people don't need to die. So why in the world would we invade Canada when it would be a war and people would die? It just seems to me to largely keep up with the original statements. I'm following through with the President's wishes full on. I'm 100% behind the idea that the President says that war is bad. I entirely agree. And I think that's why we shouldn't invade Canada and annex them, because that would be a war. That's also why I think the war in Ukraine should end, but it should end where we're winning. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you once again for the support, Howard Mendelson, and helping this channel to keep on running. But I want to make it entirely clear to everyone that we are as politically neutral as we can be. We do not pick political sides. I just want to say that I have my own opinions and beliefs on different things. Some of those opinions and beliefs may line up with the President of the United States, and they may not. But nevertheless, we keep things as politically neutral as possible here and focus entirely on the analysis of things and whether it's a good action or not in America's interest and the Western world's interest at large. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Thank you once again for support, Howard Mendelson, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Nicholas Condor, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Nicholas, as well for that support, and we appreciate that very, very much. And Nicholas said, if the Enforcer is going on a trip, will there be no fundraiser this weekend, or will Matt take over? And I will say, on my part, I will not be taking over the live streams. It's a little bit too much for one person to handle. The Enforcer can do it because he's used to it. He does it all the time. But that would be like a trial by fire for me to be able to handle live chat questions, super chats, plus doing the stream, which is sort of unfamiliar to me because I don't do that on a regular basis. That's the Enforcer's duty, is to do the entire stream. So I will not be taking over the streams. I will be doing the short war videos, though. Every single day that there is news, I'll be putting one of those out. So hopefully that answers the question pretty good. But Enforcer, what is your side of the equation?
We will not be running streams, so we will not be able to run a fundraiser this weekend. It's one of the few. I think we've only missed, one before this. This will be the second one that ever will be missed. But due to how things were working, this was really the only way we could line up for me to be able to go, is to forgo Saturday stream, Sunday stream, and Tuesday stream. That was really the only way we could have this set up. So the Sunday fundraiser has to be axed along with the other two revenue days that we also had as well, that we were running. So that's largely the answer. So unfortunately, I have to say, Nicholas Condor, that we won't be running a Sunday fundraiser this weekend, and we won't be running any live streams at all once I'm gone, which will be tomorrow. I will be gone tomorrow. Just to give y'all a little bit of a tidbit, I'm going to tell y'all all about the trip in intimate detail. I am going to go to the airport, and the plane is going to take off at 7 in the morning. Many days shall pass. And then I will return on Wednesday at 4 in the afternoon, and then I will go right back to work on getting a show ready to run that afternoon on Wednesday. So that is the intimate details of the trip. Y'all will know all about the trip and where I went after I'm back, but we generally don't like to share in-depth details about exactly where we're going before the fact or while we're even there, because of the fear of bad people running into us. If y'all run into me and y'all have seen some of the limited videos and clips where I've actually been in front of the camera and you see me or you hear me talking and you know it's me and you're like, oh my god, that's him, don't feel afraid to approach. Be like, hey, what's up? I'm a huge fan. I would love to meet y'all. I really would. It's just that we don't want to kind of broadcast everything that we're doing and everywhere that we're going before we actually do it or while we're doing it. So I want to address that somewhat well, at least the best I can. But as far as the question is going, Nicholas Condor, just to clarify again, there will unfortunately not be a Sunday fundraiser this weekend. So if you were getting ready or stocking up to throw support into the Sunday fundraiser this weekend, let's all just double dip on the next Sunday fundraiser coming up next weekend. We will make it even bigger and 2 times larger than the one that was going to be this Sunday. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for the support, Nicholas Condor, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, by the way, I do want to put this out there, just because this is interesting. As far as running a stream solo, it can be done. Like Matthew's saying that he can't really do it, and I completely get that. It can be done, though. I have done it. I think back last year during January, I did it for an entire 3 weeks when Matthew, pretty much, he didn't quit, but he moved on to just focus on law school entirely until he focused on it enough to decide that he hated it and he wanted to not do it again. For 3 weeks there, I ran the stream solo. and it's doable, but it's insanely taxing, and it's really too much to handle. Like it's possible, but the quality will be sharply degraded if that was the case. So as far as Matthew's going, he really cannot do it because he's also got a whole million other things that he's doing in the background that are his specific duties on the channel, and then he would be doing all of mine on top of that. So that would really
truthfully, I could do it, but the catch is like it would honestly be a lot different than what you're used to or what the audience is used to, because I have a different way of doing things. I don't really get too deep into rabbit holes and things like that. So honestly, if I ran a stream, it would probably only be like 2 hours long at the most, between doing the news, probably an hour long, and then doing the questions about another hour long. So it wouldn't be super in depth, which is the beauty of doing it together, is we have both sides of the equation going on at the same time. So we kind of supplement each other to an extent. So maybe one day I'll do it solo, but not right now, honestly, with you. I'll have to work myself into it a little bit further.
Yeah, eventually Matthew will be ready to take on the mantle. But today, actually, since it was our last day together, we actually went riding around. We went riding around for a little while, you know, just because we knew that this was going to be the last moment that we were going to be hanging out with each other for a bit. So we went for a ride. We went and looked at the rail yard in Irondale, and then we drove past Irondale, which was a serious mistake. Like, man, it was rough.
Man, that was tough. We drove through Woodlawn, which is I don't even think the enforcer knew he was driving into Woodlawn, because I tell you what, when we got there, I was like, oh boy, this is interesting. Yeah, this is somewhere I don't want to drive back through again, to be honest.
Actually, we were in South Woodlawn. Woodlawn's up here. This is the industrial area right outside the airport. South Woodlawn is pretty much where a lot of the crime in Birmingham happens. Like a lot of violent crimes happen there. But I got to show you all this, because this was crazy. This looks way better than it did today.
Yeah,
like,
it really does. It looked like crap in person, man. Also, they had it like fenced off like it was a war zone.
Yeah, they had it fenced off. They had roadblocks everywhere. The road was crumbling. This looks so much better than what we actually saw today. This place looked like hell. I've never seen anything like it. It looked worse today than East Kensington in Philadelphia or the abandoned areas of Detroit. It was terrible. I've never seen anything like it before. And it was just right behind this rail yard. Like, it wasn't that far away. But yeah, man, that was wild, honestly. Like, thinking back about that, like, we actually were driving through, we were like, damn, we might get shot, you know, like, that's a likelihood here. Like, that could actually happen. And also they have weirdly named restaurants like this one, that are in this area, which kind of tells you that it might not be the greatest place. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. I'll give you a little bit of a tidbit of what we did today. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well, Nicholas Condor. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I see everybody putting in the votes of confidence for a solo enforcer match show. I'm thank you all for the votes of confidence, by the way. It's really not it's really honestly not a fact that I couldn't do it. Like, I could do the like narration part. That would be not too hard. It's not too much different than a short war video. But the catch would be trying to manage it all, because that would take up all my focus to make sure I'm speaking clearly and things like that, to go through the entire monologue and to then jump into live chat and do it as well. That would be a doozy, to say the least. And then also compiling these super chats. You might notice when the enforcer does it on his own, he seems to jump around a bit trying to look at the YouTube control panel, trying to find those super chats. So that's a tough part as well. So maybe one day I'll do it. Maybe so, but thank you all for the votes of confidence. I do appreciate that. But moving on to our next super chat, this one goes to F-35s for PAF, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, F-35s for PAF, for that support. And I think that might be their first ever super chat on the channel. And thank you very much for that very generous support. They said the SOD visited the largest U.S. military cemetery outside the U.S. in Manila. 17,000 U.S. vets rest there, and Filipinos are grateful for the sacrifice that the U.S. paid for freedom, and the PI will always have your back in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the War on Terror.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. F-35s for PAF. And that is very interesting to hear. The Secretary of Defense visited the largest military cemetery outside of Manila. I actually didn't hear about that today, but that is great to hear, and it's great to know that the loss of so many service members is being respected, because a lot of those guys laid down their lives in one of the most brutal areas, or one of the most brutal theaters of World War II that was seen, which was against the Japanese. And I got to thank you so much much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And it's great to hear that the PI will have our backs well on into the future like they've had our backs in the past. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Gunfox, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for the 3 super chats for a total of $60 of support. And that is massive support on the way. And huge shout out to Gunfox for always coming through strong with that support and the days in history. And the first one says, Apollo 6. 4/4/1968, also known as AS-502, the flight plan called for following translunar injection, a direct return abort using the service module's main engine with a flight time totaling about 10 hours, but the vibrations damaged.
And I thank you for the support on that one, Gunfox61. And also, we have actually looked at Apollo 6 in the past. The link for this was purple, and I was like, interesting. But we have looked at this one in the past, and it's a very interesting sort of a mission. Look at that. That was a photo taken from a chase plane. And I got to say that plane was chasing it, that's for sure. You can tell. But beyond that, that's very interesting to hear about the Apollo 6 mission on April 4th of 1968. Very interesting indeed. And with that, thank you once again for that day in a history. And we are on to your next day in a history.
And the next one, it's about Apollo 7 on October the 11th through 22nd, 1968. And it was the first crewed flight in NASA's Apollo program and saw the resumption of human spaceflight by the agency after the fire that had killed the 3 Apollo 1 astronauts. Also, question from the chat.
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Gunfox61. And that's actually pretty cool. I actually never thought about that. But yeah, they didn't have a crewed mission until Apollo 7. I'm just learning that right now. After Apollo 1, meaning that they had 5 whole Apollo missions that were uncrewed, largely drones nearly, that were being tested in space. Very interesting to know that, Gunfox. And I thank you for sharing that about Apollo 7. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in honor of you right then and there on that one super chat that you just sent in. And so, Matthew, what do we got for a live chat as an intermission in Gunfox's Days in History?
All right, and Gunfox's live chat is going to go to Thomas D. Orazio, who says, can those B-2 bombers reach Russia from Diego Garcia?
Technically they can, but it would be a pretty long distance journey. The range of a B-2 is about 6,800 miles, meaning they can fly one way 6,800 miles and then back. I think that's how. Is that how it works, Matthew? Or is that just like in a straight line? How long can it fly before it runs out of fuel?
And repeat that question again. What was it again?
Oh, what the range, Matthew? The range. What is the range of an aircraft? What does that mean? Does that mean how far it can go before it has to turn back and fly all the way back, or is that more so how far it can fly in a straight line without running out of fuel?
So that is the maximum distance that a plane can fly without refueling.
Okay, so that's in a straight line. So technically, they can actually bomb most anything in Russia because it has a range of about 6,800 miles, I believe. So it actually could bomb everything in Russia from Diego Garcia. But I think that was really the case all the way from the United States as well, so that they could really bomb anything from Diego Garcia. And man, look at that line. That thing turned into a candy cane right
there. Look at that. They got that arc on it. That's how that nuclear missile have an arc on it.
Holy smokes.
Whoa, what the hell?
Holy smokes. Look at this. And then we go this way because it's the Mercator projection. Dang, man, that's wild. Look at that.
Zoom out so I can see what it's doing.
This is as far as I can zoom out.
Oh, real? Oh, well, dang. It's just going out into, like, oblivion.
Man, let's see here. I can do that. Pretty wild, right?
Really wild, honestly. Like, that makes no sense. So make sure you don't fire your nuke too far away because otherwise it might just go away.
So you can fire it straight up. And then it makes it to the edge of the flat Earth. And then the goblins that are under the planet that actually run everything, then they just spawn it in over here, and then it flies in over Canada. So that's kind of cool. I'm just kidding, by the way, about all that. That's just a joke, folks. I don't believe in the Earth being flat. It's actually shaped like a pear. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you once again for the support, Gunfox61, and also sponsoring a live chat. I hope we were able to answer that live chat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to none other than Gunfox. Once again, this is the last super chat that Gunfox put in, and thank you very much, Gunfox, for the third one. He said, 1854, Great Britain and France declare war on Russia, expanding the Crimean War, and 1910, the first seaplane takes off from water under its own power, piloted by Henry from the Étang de Berry Lagoon in Martigues, France. Garrett Loco.
He was crazy. I would have to agree. Garrett is loco. But let's see. Great Britain and France declare war on Russia, expanding the Crimean War. That is very interesting to hear because the Crimean War was actually a fairly major war in the middle of the 19th century and also had a lot to do with maintaining the balance of power in Europe laid out by the Congress of Vienna in 1815. And also very cool to hear that the first seaplane took flight in 1910 because Boeing, the company Boeing, actually started by producing float planes. Y'all want to see their first float planes, the first planes that Boeing ever made in their history? Well, I'm sure we can find them. I'm sure that we can find them. Did I see something about Netflix? Oh, well, there's nothing about the beginning history of Boeing. That's just lame. Hold up here. Oh, dag nabbit. Where in the world? The origins. Yeah, here we go. This was pretty much like the first plane Boeing ever made.
That is honestly not that bad.
It's not that bad. Yeah, it's not that bad. And let's see here. I wonder if they show us any other aircraft. Nope. That's it. That is the first one though. It's this one, the Boeing Model 1, also known as the B&W seaplane. It was a United States single-engine biplane seaplane aircraft. It was the first Boeing product and carried the initials of its designers, William Boeing and Lieutenant Conrad Westervelt of the United States Navy. And it's just such a cool little aircraft. It's a little fella. It has a much better flight performance, crazily enough, than the Boeing 737 MAX. How far we've fallen. America once used to be a proper country. We created balsa wood planes that never failed. Now we create giant birds of steel that come plummeting out of the sky because the weight balance was done wrongly. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep running and sharing that information with us about the floating plane, the first float plane. Let's go take a look at that. Let's go take a look at the picture of that. Oh, there it is. Oh wow, that actually looks like the walrus that was used during maritime patrols by Britain, I think, in World War I. Pretty cool, actually. Pretty neat. And still, thank you so much for the support, Gunfox61, and sharing these days in history. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I ran a poll real quick, just out of curiosity. It looks like 83% said yes, they'd like to see a Matt solo stream one day, while 17% said no. And to the 17%, your Cult of Matt, a license has been revoked, effective immediately. No, I'm just joking. But that's actually quite an interesting number right there. I was just curious about that. It's still not going to change the fact I probably can't run it right now. But thank you all for that vote of confidence. I was just curious to see what the majority of folks thought about that. So overwhelming majority said yes. But maybe one day I shall deliver. But anyways, we are now moving on to our next super chat, and this one is going to go to Brian Justin, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Brian, for that $20 support, and we appreciate that very, very much. And he said, LSA forever, and consider New England for Enforcer HQ 3.0, and one from the chat, please.
I gotta thank you so much for the support of Brian Justice and helping this channel to keep on running. And New England is an interesting area. It is an interesting area, an area of intrigue that many have looked at and thought of and possibly pondered and looked at and thunk about a little extra. And I got to thank you for the support and throwing that in. We are considering it. There are many places that are currently being considered right now in the United States, but we will have to narrow them down little by little, bit by bit, until we finally figure out exactly where Enforcer HQ 3.0 will be. But still, a massive thank you for the support. A massive thank you for being a diehard of the Lee Spring Army. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat. Also, by the way, we need to get a live chat question in honor of Brian Justin. And this one is going to go to David Tablet, who said that, does this mean that the EU believes that war is imminent?
Yes, the European Union does believe that war is imminent at this point. That appears to be the clear message from them right now. And so I hope that does address that question incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support once again. They said, take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Jenna Tolls. And I said it, I did it. Thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. We will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right. And also, by the way, we just had a bot called Chicken Little say that Russia is going to win. Chicken Little is a fitting name. But anyways, we are going to get one from the chat. And this one goes to Wiserat, who says AP News writes that the 4 missing U.S. soldiers in Lithuania are still in the M88, 16 feet down. And is that true?
That appears to be true according to the information that we're getting at this point, but the Department of Defense has still not made an official announcement as to the death of the service members. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. Thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a 20. And thank you as well, Zyper, for that support. Once again, I think that's the second one tonight. He said, Enforcer, enjoy your flight and be safe. And I hope we will have a wonderful travel wherever you go. And question from the chat, please.
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I will be safe. I will always be safe. I will be. I promise, y'all. I promise. I promise. I promise. Come on. I promise. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and help of this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who make this thing possible and keep this thing rolling day in and day out. So, of course, thank you so much once again. And also, I have to say, one more thing really quickly. The flight, it's going to be a little lengthy. So I think you can kind of get an idea. It's not going to be near to Alabama. It's going to be somewhere out in the peripheries. Maybe even not even on the lower 48. It might even be further out than that. But I'm going to let y'all imagine for a little while the ideas there. And also, really quickly, I don't know why someone gave Matthew that much disrespect. I just saw that they got banned. But
honestly, I didn't ban him for that, honestly. That guy was in here last night. He badmouthed me tonight. I was the victim tonight. Last night, he was badmouthing you. That was the other thing. And I let him have a pass on it. I'm not trying to be hypocritical, by the way. I know the force like, wait a minute, why'd you let him have a pass on me, but not yourself?
What the hell?
That was just the last straw. Like, he did it to you and me. So that just indicated to me that guy's a troll. So he had to go. So that's why he went. I wasn't that butthurt about it. I was like, well, you know, if he feels like I'm not adequate enough to match the enforcer, maybe he has a point, maybe so, because this is the enforcer's live stream, of course, the OG streamer. But at the same time, I was like, wait a minute, he's been trolling for days. I'm not sure if we can have that.
Yeah, I was about to say though, like if you ban him for that, I would say that's justified, because it's like, why be so rude? Like, you know, it's like if you don't like me being the host, you know, then this probably isn't the show for you, because I'm always the host. But if you think Matthew wouldn't make a good host, just keep that to yourself. Like if you want him to be the host, say it. If not, keep that to yourself. Don't be rude. Like that was honestly rude coming from a guy who's just like, you know, I guess has no life, I suppose. Like it's like,
oh man,
it's like, you know, like honestly, it's like, you know, it's like if you're gonna go throw shade, you know, it's like at least be able to afford an umbrella, you know. But anyway, so that we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Jose Diaz, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jose, for that support as well. He said, have a safe trip. And Puerto Rico loves the Enforcer Matt and all of our LSA brothers and sisters.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. I will be safe on the trip. I can promise you all that I will be very safe, and I will be seeing many things, a great many things, quite a large number. And I cannot wait to show you all the pictures. Hopefully, I'll be able to take a good amount of pictures and show you all what went on out there. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, by the way, Zyper just said, just to let you know, I asked for a live chat. And you're right. I'm sorry, we missed that, Zyper. So we're going to return back to that and grab that live chat question. And honestly, there's so many super chats asking for live chats. We're about to run out of live chats, actually. So this one goes to AF Kaplan. He says, regarding the Russian spy plane that flew near Germany, has there been any official statements from NATO on the incident?
No, we have not heard any official statements from NATO on that incident at this point. So I hope that does address that well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one is going to go to, I'm going to address this one real quick because I saw it come in. This one goes to Power Ant, who puts in a 129 sec, and thank you very much, Power Ant, for the support. They said, is there an official email address that one can reach you on? And please take a question from the chat. And also, by the way, typically we want our email reserved for business inquiries only, because I've realized recently I've been answering a ton. And also, I don't take any offense to it, by the way. I do answer all my emails I get, but the email is intended for business. If y'all want to reach out to us on a personal level, the Twitter is one way to do it. You can send us a message on there, or on the Patreon, you send a message as well. That's usually the two ways we try to keep it for the channel stuff. And then for the business, we try to do it on the email only to try to keep things a little bit separate. But that is the case. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say thank you for the support. And to answer that, yes, we do have an official email, but it is largely a business email. We try and keep that for people who are reaching out with business inquiries, possible sponsorships, although usually we turn most of those down, stuff like that. And that's usually where those things happen. One thing that's a little tough is that is when people email us a load, or like the inbox gets filled with folks who are throwing in comments in them, because it's totally fine. We love to talk to everyone, but the problem is that it's very hard to sift through what are personal comments and what are business related. So that starts to become a bit of an issue. But if you want to reach out to us, Twitter and Patreon, like Matthew was saying, are the best ways to do it. And so I thank you for the support, Power Ant, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that it addresses that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to another channel legend. This time it is Ari Soini, who puts in a very generous 50 Australian donation. And thank you very much, Ari, for that massive support, by the way, and we do appreciate that. And Ari said, LSA, and good luck with the HQ3 travels. And what good is the EU telling their citizens to prepare with 3 days of emergency supplies? Are they possibly worried about a nuclear strike, but they won't say it out loud?
They're most likely worried about airstrikes, more so, not really nuclear strikes. That's a possibility, but more so conventional strikes could cause a lot of disruptions. Like, for example, at the outbreak of a war, if the Russians just start lobbing somehow magically hundreds of missiles that they don't have at major cities, and the air defense isn't able to intercept them, they're probably going to want people to shelter in place so that way the military can move around freely in the streets, instead of having people clogging the streets in panic, trying to gather up supplies that they should have already had at that point. And that's probably what they're most likely wanting to do. Because in emergencies, what the government generally wants people to do in every country is just shelter in place and stay out of the way of official traffic or official activities. Because those are the ones that really are the most important and have to be prioritized at that point. So they're most likely wanting people to just be ready, so that way when crisis strikes, like a outbreak of a conventional war, everyone isn't making a run on the shopping stores or anything else for that matter, and causing massive backups and breakouts of just unmitigated chaos in the public. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for the support, Ari Sweeney, and thank you for the good luck with the travels. I can promise you, luck will be good. And I'm sure many people are wondering, where in the world will you be? Like, where in the world could you even be going? And of course, I cannot tell y'all. It is secret. But let me go check something really quickly. Let me go check the geography of our viewers, Matthew, really quickly. The cities of our viewers. Let me see something. Oh, interestingly enough, So interestingly enough, about 33,000 of y'all, at least according to the viewership that we've gotten this month, about 33,000 people are from where I'm heading. Y'all will never be able to get that analytic, so I know that's a very safe thing to say. But about 33,000 people actually have watched our channel where I'm going. So there is a very, very slim chance for those 33,000 individual viewers that are from that place that y'all might run into me in passing somewhere where I'm heading tomorrow. So, well, I'll be there for several days. So maybe some of y'all will run into me. Who knows? But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for the support, Ari Sweeney, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to, guess who? Barry Woodward, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Barry, as well, for that $20 support. He said, Enforcer, for your 8-ounce Americano Starbucks in the airport. Stay strong, LSA strong, and return whole and stronger.
Hey, and I'm going to return whole and strong. I'm going to drink lots of milk, I tell you. I'm going to be very strong. And I thank you so much for the support, and I will be making sure to get a coffee and probably some breakfast item at the airport tomorrow. Airport food is not bad, by the way. I've heard a lot of people always dissing on airport food. I actually think airport food's pretty solid, actually. But I do thank you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Jenna, as well, for that second support of the night. And they said, let's see here. Oh, man, they got some choice words here about a very famous billionaire. Sadly, Jenna, I won't read it because, of course, it's not our objective to piss people off with our opinion, of course. And I'm going to refrain from reading it. Me personally, I will say this. I don't personally hate anybody. Like, I don't even hate the billionaire you're referring to. Now, I do think he does some stupid things, but I don't hate him as an individual. I also don't hate the president either. I don't hate really any politicians. They do things that I object to, but I don't hate them necessarily. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with Matthew on that one. Amen. But still, thank you for the support, Genitals, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Power Ant, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Power Ant, for that $15 support. And we appreciate that. They said, great works tonight, guys. And never be ashamed for taking payment for your good work. And Matt, you maybe can find your own version of solo live stream Sunday fundraiser substitute. And maybe so one day, maybe so. The Sunday night fundraiser would be the biggest challenge, honestly, though, because you got to try to remember all the different donations that came in, and YouTube does not keep track of those in the control panel, I don't think. So that would be a major mess trying to keep track of that. But thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I got to say that we are never ashamed to make money at what we do. Like, it is a part of what we do. Like, you know, like we made that clear since day one. Like, we've been more transparent about it than most other people. Most other people make it seem like they're just doing it out of the love of their heart. I personally know that AdSense has a lot to do with why people are working at these kinds of things and making the videos they make. So with that in mind, that's kind of a reality of it. No one does anything for free, and I don't really think that anyone should be expected to do anything for free. That's called slavery, and we had this thing in America called the Civil War, and that was when we decided to emancipate all of the slaves and also say that there would be no more slavery where people would be forced to work for free from then on. So I find it a little bit stupid that some people want to come in here and act like us making money covering the news is wrong, because it's like, I don't see them saying that when CNN or Fox News covers the news. Fox News doesn't even cover news, nor does CNN, but they still technically are news channels, and they make tons of money off of ads, and I never see anyone complaining about that. I never see anyone complaining about Elon selling the Starlink's access to Ukraine for tens of millions of dollars a month. I don't ever see anyone complaining about that. I don't ever see anyone complaining about anything that has to do with anyone who's making a living that is involved in any way, shape, or form with the war in Ukraine. And then, for some reason, when it comes to us, then some people want to have a problem with us working 70 hours a week sometimes to put out news for everyone, and we hardly get paid. Like compared to what other people are who are doing this in mainstream news are getting paid, we are hardly getting paid anything. Most people in mainstream news who even talk about this for just 6 minutes in passing are usually getting paid tens of millions of dollars a year because they're their main head anchor for their news organization. We get paid a smidging of that, hardly even a spackling of that. And so it's like, you know, for people to make a problem out of that, that's just stupid. Because it's like, if people are making a problem out of me covering news and making money off of it, it's like I can make a million problems out of things. I can make a problem out of plumbers charging for plumbing services, because how dare you not let someone shit in their house? Like, you're going to charge them to make it safe for them to shit in their house. How dare you? Or, you know, an electrician, you don't want people to, you know, not freeze to death in the winter, you sick shit. Like, you could do that endlessly and pretty much beat everyone over the head for making a living doing anything if you really wanted to. So I've never been ashamed of it, you know, and it is what it is. Like, it's not like we deny it, and it's not like we're other people where we're like, if you give me money, you're helping Ukraine. It's like, no, it's like y'all are helping us to keep us covering the news. That's why we have Sunday night fundraisers. If you want to help out Ukraine, you help out Ukraine there. But every other day of the week, you can support this channel or not, and the choice is theirs. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Duncan VR, a channel legend as well, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, as well, our Australian viewer from down under, for that support. He said, "Baba, move, wait, hold on, Baba, move, woof, quack. Enjoy your trip to Cuba. They're eating the dogs on Tuesdays. Hot dog man. He'd be stripping at the Gaza Strip. Meow, oh man."
I can promise you that I'm not going to Cuba. I'm never going to Cuba. I'm probably wanted in Cuba for saying things against the state, probably. So I'll never be going to Cuba. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Duncan VR, because if it wasn't for folks like you, where would we be right now? We wouldn't be here, I can promise you that, and that's why we're grateful for your support, and we thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, baba, moo moo, quack, woof, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Uncovered Cube 7, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Uncovered Cube, as well, for that support. They said, "Birthday rabbit hole. What are your thoughts on a railcar ICBM? And a big shout out to my wife for getting me a patch, hat for my LSA patch. It's not just a display now."
Hey, that's really good to hear, and thank you for the support. And a railway ICBM, it's not a bad idea, actually, as far as like keeping an ICBM mobile. There are some issues, though, like, for example, if it derails, what happens then? Like, it's like that would be a bit of an issue. Really, ever moving a nuclear weapon around like an ICBM, a actual ready to go rocket, is usually a bit concerning. Even with the Russians doing it with the Topol M, it's really concerning. It's doable, and it would make it very hard for them to ever figure out exactly where your nuclear missiles are to be able to destroy them. But still, there's always the issue of what if that thing derailed, and also, how much would that actually cost to keep that thing moving? Because you would have to pretty much get a lease from the railroads to keep your military train just moving around endlessly on private railroads to keep it pretty much, not in the same place. So it's like, how much would that cost to lease those railroads for that amount of time that train would be moving through it? And then that might end up getting a little bit costly. But still, I think it wants to give us support and help this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Satu Forever, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. They said China can't even get a ping from Xi.
They can't get a zing from Xi. I tell you, it's a sad thing. But China's having a little bit of a rough time these days. They even had to stop that C.K. Hutchinson deal. But beyond that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Janet Roski, who puts in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, Janet, also for that support. They said, is the U.S. required to replace all the equipment that we gave to Ukraine?
We're not really required to do it, but we largely will do it because the Department of Defense is requesting it. So we're not really required to do it, but we will do it. And so with that, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 6 from Hotso. And thank you very much, Hotso, for that $6 support once again. And thank you very much for keeping to support the channel. And we do appreciate that. And there's no comment to address, but huge shout to Hotso for that support. And we also just got a $20 super chat from another channel legend, a longtime legend. It is Marion Deemer once more. And thank you very much, Marion, for that $20 support as well. It said Cuba is really crazy and pretty. I watched a report on the island and saw the same 1954 Ford that my dad had. And Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava.
And thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemert, and helping this channel to keep on running. And Cuba is a pretty nice-looking country. It's just that you never really get to see it because of the government down there. But it is a neat-looking place. Like, you have that. You have the old Spanish-style buildings, which have never been replaced because they've never had the money to replace it. And it's just a really nice place. It's one hell of a place. And I would personally like to see it one day. It's just that I'm not going to see it as long as there's a communist government in charge. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also really cool to hear that there was a 1954 Ford, exactly the same one that your dad had. And I got to thank you once again. And of course, Slava Ukrainian, Rum Slava. And thank you for sharing that little tidbit, because I do think that Cuba is pretty neat. It's just that I don't like commies. And also, I saw someone say, Douglas Weaver say, hey, you don't like Doge? Who the hell ever said that? Who ever said that? Like, I don't even know where
that's domestic politics. We don't even comment on Doge or anything like that.
We don't even comment on that. And like, you heard me say a joke about Elon, so then your brain did ultra somersault gymnastics to the point you win a gold medal at the Olympics for him to come up with the conclusion that I hate Doge, when I've never made a comment on Doge either way, whether I like it or hate it. So gotta say, man, someone needs to take their pills. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Purple Gerbil, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that $10 support. They said you should get a private railway car for Enforcer HQ and move around the country.
That actually would be an interesting idea, but I would never do that because that'd be wildly expensive to just find people to move it around. But it would be neat. I have to say, it actually would be pretty cool. You can actually find a lot of railroad equipment for sale online. Most of it is pretty crap. Like, I'm going to be entirely honest. Like, here's a website that sells it. You can actually see that they do have some passenger rail cars for sale. This one's an old one, a part of the Empire Builder, and it looks like it's at a railway museum in Minnesota. But you could modify it and make it into a private rail car, which would be kind of neat. But, that would still be wildly expensive to get a rail car, to refit it, make it mainline ready, so that way we could then lease it and then have it travel behind, say, an Amtrak train, or maybe have a private railroad company itself, like BNSF or Norfolk Southern, move it around. And so I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Thomas D. Orezio once again, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Thomas, for that support. He said, what am I going to do without a live stream?
Watch reruns. I always encourage you to watch reruns, and Matthew will be putting out fresh videos every day.
Fresh videos. The freshest type, Jerry, the fresh.
Fresh videos, get them while they're hot. They'll be going out pretty much every day while I'm gone, so there will be something for y'all to watch. That I can guarantee. It's just that it won't be hours worth of shows. But once again, I hope this does also make people really appreciate the time that we fill in each and every one of y'all's days with a fun news coverage that is also well informed. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Leora Abigail, who puts in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, Leora, for that massive support once again. And we appreciate that very much. They said, hey, Enforcers, keep up the comment relief during these times for sure. And also, here's a 10 toward the travel fund.
Hey, thank you for the support to the travel fund. I gotta say, thank you greatly for that. And also, thank you for wanting us to keep up the comic relief. We try our best, I tell you. We try our best. And although we try our best, we never have the greatest success. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now, Leora Abigail. And of course, thank you for being an old god and a channel legend as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the new IKB 4472, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, the new IKB, for that support. They said, for once, the UN does something based. Long live Ukraine. Long live the LSA. Onward to victory. For Harambe and for liberty.
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And I'd have to say that finally did something a little based. But the thing that isn't so based about the UN is that it really means nothing still, that they denied that. It's not really like they're like a governing body of anyone, anywhere, or anything. But I still thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Barry Woodward, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Barry, for that support once again. And he said, LSA, attention. Slava LSA in Ukraine, and carry out the plan of the day.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, and we are executing the plan of the day, every day, all month. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Simon Condon. And also, let me get rid of this guy who's spamming. He's got to go. But this one goes to Simon Condon, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Simon, as well, for that support. He said, how could Russia possibly have the boots and the bullets to have any sort of standoff with NATO? They're using donkeys, the disabled, and the DPRK in Ukraine, and LSA.
And I thank you for the support, and it doesn't really matter, because as long as they force a conventional war, they can then threaten tactical nuclear usage on the battlefield and strategic nuclear usage later on. So it doesn't really matter if they actually are combat effective. It just matters that they're able to force a conventional war and then threaten nuclear annihilation as a consequence of it. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Dean Hugh, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Dean, as well, for that $5 support. He said, business trip, you guys are on the brink of big time, getting coaching, and best of luck with everything, and you guys are great. LSA.
And I thank you so much for support. I do want to make this clear, though. It's not like a business trip like that. Like, I'm not going out to LA to go talk to, you know, Warner Brothers or something and get a contract with them. It's nothing like that. We're really just trying to figure out where Enforcer 3.0 is going to be. Because right now we're in Enforcer 2.0 HQ. We're trying to figure out where the third headquarters of the Enforcer will be. So that's what we're in the process of trying to figure out right now. So my trip, it's kind of a bit more for fun than for business, really. The fact is, I haven't had a trip of my own the whole time I've run this show, so this is the first one where I've ever gone and done something on my own. But the whole idea is to go out, have some fun, and then also scout out an area a little bit and see if it would be worthy to be Enforcer HQ 3.0. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another super chat from David Walter, who puts in a 10. And thank you, David, once more. He said, back again, and can you help me understand how China's positioning through Belt and Road is a sub-proxy war versus the United States and USSR Russia doing actual proxy wars in the 50s and the 90s?
Yes, China is trying to build up its position and preeminence in the world to be the major global power, the major global superpower, and that means that they have to be able to thwart the United States. For this reason, they are involved in a whole bunch of economic and military expansionist campaigns throughout the majority of the world, where they're attempting to try and bring countries under their sphere of influence and control and take their economic activity and add it to their own and help them to be able to grow their economy. This means that this is openly threatening the United States' position as a global superpower in the world, and we're having to actively thwart their efforts at growing their abilities or growing their sphere of influence or possibly threatening or jeopardizing ours. So it's pretty much the same thing for those reasons in very simplified terms. And so with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Indy Andy 4C for putting in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Indy Andy, for being a longtime legend and throwing in that support. And also big shout out to Brett Illing for throwing in a 3. And huge shout out to the both of you for supporting the channel and helping to keep it running. And we also have a 5 from Bad POG, who puts in that 5 and says, a hump yard has hills to semi-autonomously sort cars, slowing down with some of the equipment in the tracks. Some post do not hump. Tropic Thunder, Simple Jack.
Thank you for the support. That is actually true. You are actually correct. Some hump yards do have little hills. This one has a hill right here. They push the rail cars up this little length. They go over the hill. They get slowed down right there, and then they get slowed down again here, and then they get sorted into their respective tracks. So that is actually correct, and I thank you for sharing that little tidbit of railroad information and knowledge. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, here's a better way to see this today, like what I was trying to show you. When we were driving down this road on 1st Avenue North, down here is the engine yard, or not really the engine yard, but the engine maintenance bay, where they have all of their locomotives just sitting here doing absolutely nothing, waiting for a job to do, which is pretty neat.
Interesting.
Is that
That's
a
a lot of trains.
Conrail? Wicked. It's a Conrail. Look at that. It's all blue.
That is neat. It's safe from fires that way.
I don't know how making it blue makes it safe from fires, but okay. I'll believe you. I trust you, man. I trust you. And also there's some BNSF executive liveries. Holy smokes! And also that one looks like it's at the end of its days right there. This one that looks like it's rust colored. That one might be reaching the end of its time.
I think it is. I think it's finished.
I think the thing's cooked, Anga. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Power Ant for putting in a $5 donation once more, and huge shout out for Power Ant for making the channel to keep on running. And also shout out to Blazov, who put in a 2 as well and did not leave a comment either. But huge shout out to Power Ant and Blazov for that support. And we also have a 5 from Uncovered Cube 7, who said, I love Rodney. And have you watched Caddyshack? And I bet you get a free bowl of soup with that hat. Looks good on you, though.
Hey, and I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I have never actually seen Caddyshack. I've seen clips of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing in one go. So hopefully one day I will. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Halligan218, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Halligan, as well, for that support, and we appreciate that very much. He said, I'm glad that Mr. Studebaker graciously approved your time off, and here's a down payment for some airplane peanuts.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support and helping me to get some airplane peanuts. I think the last time I got on a plane, they gave me like Lotus, like crackers or something like that. So hopefully this time we'll actually get real peanuts. Although I don't think they do that anymore because of the fear of peanut allergies in the common population. Nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you have made this thing possible for a long time, and we do have to thank the generosity of Mr. Anthony Studebaker for providing me with a couple of free days of paid time off. Actually, it's not paid time off. We don't get paid time off here on YouTube. You just work and make money, and if you're not working, you're not making money. So I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we got a 5 from Alex Burleton. And thank you very much, Alex, for that support. He said, keep up the good work and take one from the chat.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Alex Burleton. And we will take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Alan, who said, how does Russia still have resources after everything we've seen, the donkeys, the burning refineries, etc.?
They still have resources because they're still able to produce small arms ammunition, and they're also able to continue to conduct a small amount of war industry manufacturing, like a limited number of main battle tanks per month and such things, but generally it's in much smaller numbers these days. And so with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat from Tom Exman. And thank you very much, Tom, for that support as always. And he said, maybe everyone can donate this Sunday's fundraising monies to the Myanmar Bangkok 7.5 earthquake relief.
Possibly. I did hear about that earthquake today. We possibly could do that, but considering that we really don't have a lot of news to cover on that at the moment, it might be hard to get a lot of people enthused in supporting that fundraiser. We might continue to do more Ukraine fundraisers, but we'll see. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, wait, hang on. Sorry, I actually just realized what you're saying, Tom, actually, because we're not running a fundraiser. Everyone can donate to the Myanmar Bangkok 7.5 earthquake relief. Now that I can be behind. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from David Walter. And he says, Panera, In-N-Out, or Chili's, if you had to go between the two of you. Honestly, me, I would say between them all, I would go with In-N-Out personally.
I'd agree.
But yeah, I would have to say that one for sure. But Enforcer, what do you say?
I'd say In-N-Out. And so with that, I thank you for the support, David Walter, and asking a really interesting question. That's probably the most important one of the night right there. And so with that, thank you once again. Hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 3 from Sergey. And thank you, Sergey, for that support. He said, Andrew, I bet you're going to Joe, LSA.
I don't know what Joe is, but I do thank you for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. Look, Jack, I'm going somewhere for a little bit of time. I'm going to Camp David. Whoa, come on, Jack, come on. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, and he puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, LSA Sergeant Figment, for that support and helping the channel running. He said, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And that is an order, LSA. Hit that like button. Hit it, damn it. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, LSA Sergeant Figment. You always throw in that support every single night with the same message, and we greatly appreciate it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Power Ant once again. And he says, take Ken's Prozacs question from the chat. How many donkeys pull an ICBM?
That is a great question, Power Ant, and that really depends on the size of the ICBM. If we were to assume that it was a T'Pol-M intercontinental ballistic missile, I would say probably a significant number of donkeys would be required, possibly dozens of them, in both pulling and pushing configurations to be able to make that thing move. So that would be my answer, probably a couple of dozen. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dean Hugh, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Dean, for that $2 support. He said, how about a new red line? Putin must leave power.
That's an interesting one. Maybe we should try and start moving on that one to make it fair. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And guess what, folks? It is now time to move on to our live chat questions this early in the stream, believe it or not. And once again, huge shout out to everybody once more for supporting the channel tonight and going out with a bang on tonight's live stream until Wednesday of next week. And now it's time to get to our Morse code goes to the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsaps, Her Royal Fluffiness, Airbell Garbo, Jenny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said Morse for tonight says Russia is going to have to get on board with the idea they suck before we talk to them again. LLT LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct time and time again. Y'all have gotten that correct for the 1,129th day of the war, and that is incredibly impressive, as a matter of fact. And so with that, it is time for us to move on into the next super chat, which is from Ishweg, who threw in a 10 and said, "War damn eagle." And I actually cannot make a comment on that one because here in Alabama, that is akin to politics. We may see that there are gang rivalries in the street over that one, so we'll withhold comment on that one for now. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on into the live chat. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right. And we only have three, by the way, because we've already gotten so many with the super chat. So we have three left. So this one's going to go to Phoenix, who says, why have those bombers in Diego Garcia? Wouldn't Germany or Crete be better locations, or even Qatar would be far better place to reach Iran?
Qatar is too close. It's kind of about distance. You don't want them to be right there where they can get blown away, because the Iranians could just launch a preemptive attack and then wipe out half of the stealth bomber fleet of the U.S. Air Force. So you don't really want them to be right there exactly. And also, there could be a considerable fear that Cyprus or Crete might be in range of Iranian attack, considering that Crete is only 1.5 thousand miles away from the epicenter of Iran, and Diego Garcia, on the other hand, right down here, is about a good 30, well, actually almost 3,000 miles away from Iran. So really, as far as they would be concerned, it's really about keeping U.S. assets that would be involved in a strike against Iran outside of striking range for the Iranians to be able to destroy them. So that really is the reason why they're so far away, it would seem, but in reality, they're actually as close as they could safely be. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to the real hot dog man, who says, if the U.S. decided to send troops to Ukraine, what do you think would happen? And Russian troops get whipped out, surrender en masse, or retreat in their own and say, screw those?
I think it would start a major conventional war, and if the United States started to push back the Russians at a lightning pace, which we most likely would after a couple of months, they would probably start to use tactical nuclear weapons, and then we would be looking at an actual nuclear war breaking out. So it might not be the best case scenario to do such a thing, but that largely would be the outcome, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Sluggernaut, who says, do you think the United States should go back to Afghanistan and get our $7 billion worth of military equipment that was left after we pulled out too quick?
No. Honestly, it's worthless. It would cost, think about it. So we want to get $7 billion of military equipment out. So we have to invade Afghanistan a second time, spending trillions in the end probably, to recover $7 billion worth of equipment. Just got to chalk that one up to a loss. Yes, it probably wasn't the greatest thing to lose that equipment, but it's going to cost a lot more to go back over there, invade Afghanistan a second time, to then get back $7 billion worth of equipment. It's like saying, aw, damn, that guy just robbed me of $5. Well, I had to go rob him of his life and then spend 20 years in prison. It just doesn't make sense. It's like, it was $5, maybe call the cops on that and charge the guy, well, have him charged with theft. But, trying to do something rash, it really won't end up paying off in the end. And I think that's largely what would happen there. It's and also on top of that, $7 billion worth of equipment is nothing really in reality. It's only it's only one Nimitz-class supercarrier that's been devalued for decades at that point. And while a Nimitz-class supercarrier sounds like a lot, $7 billion, at least in a $950 billion annual spending budget, is quite literally peanuts. On a military level, that's a non-existent amount of money. It's not even worth going back and getting it. And also, we have a trend of leaving equipment behind literally everywhere. At the end of World War II, we left a load of shit behind in Europe. It was an endless amount. Some of it ended up coming back to America. A lot of it ended up staying over there. You can still see that in the post-war world. A lot of stuff that France, Germany, and Britain was using was just left behind U.S. surplus or Lend-Lease equipment that was given to them. Another thing is that in Lebanon, when the U.S. was involved there, we left a load of weapons behind in Beirut because it was just too expensive to get it out. Sometimes getting the stuff out is more expensive than the value of the equipment, and at that point, we decide it's just better to leave it behind. So I would say, honestly, not. And also on top of that, we're going to be saying, let's send many young American men to die, possibly, to go get a truck, like a Humvee that's broken down at this point. It's not even operational. So that way we can get it back and say that there wasn't a dollar that the Taliban ended up getting from abandoned equipment. It seems like a hard thing for me to sell. That would be a tough one. So I'd say most likely not. At least at this point. We got to play the cards we're dealt. It was a major mistake when it happened, and it is what it is at this point. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching. The last stream I'll be on for quite some time. Actually, it's the last stream we'll have on air for a little bit of time. We will see you all on a live stream, at least on Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern time, to cover the next untold length of news from around the world. It's going to be a lot at that point, but still, I thank you all so much once again for watching this stream tonight. We are always entirely honored and appreciative of knowing that so many of y'all continue to watch this channel and use it as your primary source of news, and we will miss y'all over the days that we're gone from covering the news here on the stream. Have no fear, though. We will be back, and we will be running continuous streams once again once we come back, at least until April 19th, when the same thing will happen again, because then we're going to be looking at other places on top of that. So with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, and Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight on the last stream for about 4 days. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. That's 4 stream days that we will be off and not streaming. But there will be, like we said, the short war videos coming out when there is news to cover. So that will be coming out midday. And once again, folks, we will be seeing you all on Wednesday night of next week, and also during the midday short war videos as well, like I mentioned. So with that, we'll see you all after a small hiatus here on the channel. And we'll be very happy to get back to it on Wednesday. And we'll be looking forward to get to it then. But I'm stuttering and mumbling all over the place, so let me go ahead and wrap it up because my brain's getting tired. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Hero Slava, get some rest, and we'll see you then, and good night.
Go to